Hey, everybody. Welcome to Lorebeards. Today we have a special guest. I think I'm not sure which side of the screen it's on. For me, it's over here, but I'm guessing it's probably over there. Anyway, this is Russell Zimmerman. Why don't you introduce yourself, Russell?
Hey, everybody. It's nice to be here. Ross and I have been buddies for, 10 years-ish
Yeah, about.
now, I think. Yeah, making us feel old. Um, I am a full-time freelancer in the RPG and war game industry. I occasionally dabble in video game writing also, and in academia, historian and a history professor. But I freelance of it, which means I'm just juggling. So kind of a catch as catch can and finding a new game that I love and emailing somebody and then doing some work for them. So yeah, it's really fun to get to party, and most notably in the last year and a half or so, I've begun writing for Black Library for Warhammer 40K. So I've got two short stories out so far, which is pretty cool, but it's even cooler that I've got a lot more stuff in the pipeline still coming. So yeah, it's pretty neat to anytime you get to add to the canon of a universe that you love. So yeah, I'm excited about that. Excited for more of it to come out. I'm excited about the reception that I've gotten so far. So yeah, just everything's been pretty cool.
Yeah, there is more on the way from Russell, I should point out. I know he's got a lot of stuff in the works. And for anybody who's curious about Russell's writing, you can find his stuff for Battletech and Shadowrun as well. Oh, and he also wrote for a video game, which was Digital
The big one was Satellite Rain,
Satellite Rain. That's right.
which I think has now been out 10 or maybe 12 years. But yeah, that was it's kind of a cyberpunk taking these type of game. And I ended up writing a tie-in fiction for that. And also I was lead writer on the game. So pretty cool. We won some awards and junk. And I got that gig by just messaging them on Kickstarter. Like I wanted to back the game. I thought it looked really cool, but we were starting to get ready for a move, so I really couldn't, in good conscience, shell out a bunch of money for it. So I literally just messaged them and was like, "Hey, do you guys need a writer? If I could do some short fiction or something?" And they're like, "Actually, funny story, we need a writer for the video game." And I was like, "Oh, cool, let's talk." So yeah, just whatever geeky stuff I can stick my fingers into, I get to work on it. So it's been pretty cool.
I could tell some stories about how surprisingly you can get a lot of work just by asking for it.
Yeah,
Like a lot.
and it's always interesting. You'll go to a convention or whatever, and I almost always try to do a seminar on freelancing or how to get into freelancing or what it's like to be a freelancer or whatever, right? And people always ask, um, like there's one right way to start doing the job, and there really isn't. It's just like whatever works, man, and it's going to be different from company to company. The process to get signed on with Black Library is very different than the process to get signed on with a friend of yours that you know from freelancing that is starting his company, right? Like it's two wildly different expectations and processes and stuff like that. Then you've got your, Catalyst Game Labs and FASTA Games and Green Ronin that are all kind of in between on that spectrum of GW, the global powerhouse, publicly traded, remarkably professional and kind of business oriented conservative. There've been lots of kind of checks and balances on every project with them. Things go through multiple editors at like each stage, and then the other end of the spectrum. I've been writing for Catalyst Game Labs forever. A guy named John Helfers is the main fiction guy. And not too long ago, I got a novel okayed with I want to say it was about an 8-sentence pitch. It was him, elves, and I just told him that sitting at a hotel bar at a convention, and he almost fell out of his chair. And then he was like, "We'll get you the contracts right now, man." So it's just different, The longer you've been somewhere, it's different. The more a certain editor knows you, it's different. So yeah, there's no right or wrong way to get into freelancing. You just gotta do whatever a given company wants.
That's great. And Sotek's always on me to make sure we introduce ourselves at the beginning of each show. So I should say, if you don't know who I am, my name's Ross Watson, and I am a guy who's worked on a lot of role-playing games, a lot of video games, a lot of them for Warhammer 40K. So that's one of the reasons why I'm here as a 40K Lorebeard. Rusty, of course, is my good friend, and because he's a Black Library author, I thought he'd be a great one to come on board when Alexis, unfortunately, is not able to join us, so that we can discuss today's topic. Abhumans.
Dun dun dun.
So what is an abhuman, Rusty?
Abhumans are, according to the ecclesiarchy, they are humans that may just look a little different because they've adapted to their environment some. So they like to say that Ogren, who are basically just fantasy ogres, that's just humans from a high gravity world. They're not Xenos. They're not filthy on humans. We promise. They're just people, but they're big and strong. And that's all. Stop asking questions. And that's kind of their official line. But in reality, they are a multitude of near human species that have just kind of been accepted because they're found useful enough by enough people in power in the Imperium. Sometimes they've been made, like there are strains of abhumans that are kind of mutants that have been genetically created on purpose. There are some that are basically aliens that humans have found. There are some in between. But yeah, they're just funky little not quite humans that the Imperium of Man swears are actually humans. Stop asking questions. Don't worry about it. Get back in line.
Well, I think I would argue that the Imperium tends to see abhumans as mostly human or almost human. Like they're definitely second class citizens. They're not.
Yeah.
They're never quite as good as their standard human in terms
Yeah.
of like the way they're treated. But as you pointed out, if they're useful enough, the Imperium's like, yeah, we'll tolerate you. We will sanction you as a tolerated subhuman version of humanity.
Yeah, we're not going to officially call you Xenos. We're not going to officially call you a mutant so that we need to abhor you, right? Like we're just gonna say that like technically you're a people, but you also weren't created in the blessed image of the God Emperor, so you're kind of garbage, and you still do what we say, or we'll kill you with even less of a second thought than your average Imperial Guard conscript. So, yeah, it's good times. It's good times. It's a sweet gig with no pressure, really easy job, safe working conditions. OSHA loves these guys. It's everything's great. Everything's great.
I think many abhumans are developed through adaptation to different worlds. Sometimes high gravity planets can produce certain abhumans,
and low gravity. If you look at the there are whole generations of humans that are born and raised aboard ships that never have full gravity, or they might just work in parts of the ship that don't have gravity, or whatever. So you've got this kind of mutant underclass that is what keeps every huge Imperial fleet and rogue trader ship going. But they can have issues because like they don't see the sun, right? So you can have some kind of freaky, like what we associate with subterranean features. They can also be extra tall and skinny because of the lack of gravity. There's a lesser version of that in like The Expanse, right? Because 40K is everything turned up to, I don't know, it's going to say 11, but let's be honest, it's 15 or 16. But in The Expanse, there's a thing where a lot of people that are born and raised in this artificial environment with weak gravity then go to a planet, and it's like when a human in normal, real life goes to like a really high altitude with the thin air, and it's physical issue. And for them, the issue is gravity, and it just exhausts them and wears them out, and their organs aren't used to that constant downward strain, right? So yeah, like you can see it in The Expanse to a kind of reasonable sci-fi level, and then you see it in 40K to an entirely different one. So it's high grav, low grav, even just subterranean. The underbelly of hive cities. Over time, people get super pale or can see in the dark better, or whatever. So yeah, it's it happens. It happens. Radioactivity is an issue that nobody cares about. So you've got those rolls of the dice, and not exactly the best diet for your everyday Imperial citizen. So that's, messing with some stuff. Yeah, there's all kinds of them.
So arguably, there is an entire faction in 40K that is abhuman, and that is, of course, the Leagues of Votan, who are the squats reimagined, and they are a divergent human clade of some kind, possibly an extreme abhuman branch is a way of thinking about it. But due to their clone bioengineering and other things that they do to themselves, especially with their culture being involved with abominable intelligence and things like that, it's very difficult for the Imperium to look at them and say, okay, those are humans, but slightly different. And they often get treated. I think probably the Votan are probably the most commonly looked at abhuman, and say, okay, well, is that an abhuman or is that actually a Xenos? Because not just their physiology, it's their culture is so divergent.
Yeah, and they also have the most prominent place. I mean, since they came back, in the lore, they're not just one type of unit in the Imperial Guard or what have you. They're not a purely cosmetic difference in the Imperial Guard. They're their own army. They've got their own books, their own rules, their yada yada yada. So yeah, they're definitely, I would say, the most prominent, maybe even the most consistent, I might say, because they're not mutants. They're guiding their stuff with their own, gene crafting and cybernetics and stuff like that. So yeah, they're definitely in a unique position among abhumans that, again, in the kind of meta narrative, of course, they're just fantasy dwarves, right? They're not abhumans at all. They're just dwarves.
In space.
Yeah, they're just space dwarves. Yeah. But yeah, so it's, again, it's up to the Imperium how they decide to define, I was about to say define people, but not even always people. Sometimes things.
Well, there's some arguments to be made that the biology of abhumans is maybe less important to the Imperium as their social caste, if you want to think about it that way, because the Imperium says, okay, Ogrons, you're big and strong and dumb, so we're going to put you as shock troops and cargo lifters and things like that. But there's no attempt to explore their potential.
Not generally speaking, no. They're kind of given the fantasy stereotype of ogres, and that they're big, super durable, not the brightest, and often, and very often, I'd say almost by default, from like feral worlds with a very savage society and that sort of thing. So nobody sees that and goes, you know what? I want that guy to drive a spaceship for me, right? Like that's not the job that the Imperium thinks of when they see those guys. They look at what they bring to the table and they say, let's just lean into that. let's give them the biggest, most durable guns we've got.
Or
Let's
shields and
give,
clubs.
yeah. But even like the guns that they do have are specifically also designed to be used as clubs, even more than your average las rifle with a
Yep.
bayonet. They're like, yeah, no, it's a club that happens to also work like a gun. So yeah, they just lean into that. Now they do have some attempts to overcome that with the boneheads, where particularly bright Ogren will get cybernetic implants in
The
order to
bone.
try and maximize their potential. And they'll give them, skull computer add-on type of stuff to try and kind of get them smart enough to be in charge of other Ogren. But yeah, for the most part, like you said, it's kind of, what you bring to the table is what the Imperium is going to demand of you at 500%.
Yeah, well, I mean, the Imperium, you can argue the Imperium recruits and trains them for only very narrow roles, but I think you can look at Ratlings and see that there is a pretty wide variety of skills and roles that a Ratling could fill. And actually, funnily enough, we had a Let's Build show where we built our own Space Marine chapter, and we decided that Space Marine chapter had a very close relationship with Ratlings, who in fact ended up as our ambulance drivers and our field medics, which was really fun.
Nice.
And I was like, the fun thing is a Ratling certainly could. Like, there's no reason why he couldn't do that.
There are, and I warned Ross about this earlier, there are things that I would love to enthusiastically say during this very conversation that I can't, because I have stuff in the pipeline that not only isn't out yet, but has not been officially announced yet. But it is tantalizingly close to done. Final edits are finished. The layout is finished. Everything's done but slap and cover art and a price tag, basically. So I do not want to poop the bed here at the goal line and get myself in trouble. But I'll just say yes. You are correct, and that the Imperium has very strong tendencies to, for lack of a better term, stereotype abhumans, whether it be Ogren or Ratlings, which of course are the two most common, partially because they're the ones that you see on the tabletop. But yeah, I've got a very large fiction thing that is on the way that once I can, I would love to be back on the show. But yeah, right now I'm just like, oh, I can't say stuff. I can't quote stuff. I can't even jump in and enthusiastically brainstorm like I want to. So instead, I will point out that as an example of the versatility potential of abhumans, you can look at some of the different RPGs where there's racial tendencies that Ratlings will be good at certain things in the same way that in D&D elves are dexterous, right? But a lot of jobs are open to Ratlings that aren't just being a thief or a sniper. So
or a cook.
Yeah. But there's certain tendencies that they have and natural aptitudes and weaknesses. But at the same time, there's potential there that I think we've seen in the RPG more than on the tabletop, where Ratlings, for instance, have only ever been in 40K proper. The kind of scout snipers. I know there is a cook in Necromunda that I think is also kind of a medic type of thing. I haven't played him or anything, but I've got the mini. He looks really, really cool.
Yeah.
And in
when I said cook, that was the guy I was thinking of.
Oh yeah. Well, and it's the other kind of not Hobbit stereotype, right?
Legally distinct.
Yes. But you see that also in the Ratlings in the Kill Team that came out. I want to say it was about a year ago. That for those that might not know, Kill Team is skirmish scale Warhammer. So it's the same kind of 40K setting, but it's zoomed in on a force of 6 or 8 or 10 or maybe 12, a squad instead of an army. And one thing that's been pretty cool from it is that they've showed off some diversity. So there you've got this Rattling kill team that overall is pretty focused on infiltration and sniping. But at the same time, they have like a combat engineer who does demolition stuff. They've got one crazy little guy with knives, right? Like they've got, so you can see some of that versatility there. Whereas in kind of mainline or mainstream 40K, there's one unit, Rattling snipers. That's what they bring to the table. And that's kind of all there is, unless you find somebody that's done some crazy conversions.
Blackstone Fortress also has a couple of Rattlings in it as well.
Yeah,
Rattling Explorers, and they've
yeah.
got like grapple guns and stuff
grapple
like that.
guns and snipers, and yeah, doing that side of things. They're also really some of the kind of war movie stereotypes, which overlap a lot with prison stereotypes in 40K, is the guy that can get you stuff, right? And Rattlings often have that role.
Scroungers.
In the Imperial Guard, yeah. They're the ones that are kind of able to get you what you need, which I think in part is because they have trouble getting what they need because they're not quite full humans. So they're not, top of the list to get the supplies that they need. But yeah, then they make the most of what they have. They steal from other regiments. They procure, and that sort of thing. And yeah, so there's a valuable kind of off the game table thing, which again, I think it's neat how that showed up in Kill Team, and that one of their kind of unique upgrades is just extra rations or that sort of thing. So yeah, they play with it that way, and that they're able to sometimes just use their little sticky fingers to get a hold of stuff that maybe they didn't get issued by a quartermaster.
I'm going to take a moment to read some super chats. And Rusty, if you want to chime in on these, you're welcome. But I think primarily this is going to be aimed from the community towards some of the stuff that we've done in the past. But by all means, please chime in. So our first super chat is from Spitfire 703, who says Abhuman is short for a better human.
I'm pretty sure that's going to get you lined up against a wall, and they're going to argue instead for like abnormal human. But like everything in the Imperium, it depends on what world you're on and what commissar or member of the priesthood you're talking to at a given conversation. So I'm sure a better human is better for morale than calling them filthy little half Xenos. So yeah, that's fair.
And our next one is actually part of some of the fan theories and headcanon about abhumans. Skylar Martin 4298 says, yes, abhumans. We finally have a Space Marine stream on this channel. So there's a weird fan theory out there that says that the abhuman strains are just the ruins of Imperial proto-marine or black ops gene experiments.
And we know that some of them are.
Yeah, there's at least a couple that are trying to.
Yeah, that have kind of been messed with enough. The Afriel strain, I know, is one, or Afriel. I'm not sure how to pronounce it.
Afriel is how I pronounce it.
Afriel, right? Yeah, it's gonna sound right. But yeah, they're one where it's like we kind of made these guys, but we made enough of them. These kind of weird albino super soldiers that they count as abhumans. So yeah, who's to say that that's not the case? And also, if you're wanting to spit some heresy, you could call a Space Marine a mutant if you want, and like see where that gets you. But like technically, they kind of are, you guys. So yeah, again, it comes down to who you're talking to and who you are and what your social status is and who else is watching when the conversation takes place.
Space Marines being mutants is a really interesting discussion to have, because there's a Venn diagram where there is some overlap.
Yeah.
All mutants are not Space Marines, but some Space Marines are mutants. That is a true fact.
And that's without
So
even getting into, the wolfen or whatnot,
but
where you've got
specifically,
some,
that's what I was thinking, or the flesh changed Thousand Suns, or a lot of different other options that you could
yeah.
throw out there.
Or, I mean, again, the argument could be made just any space marine that's undergone all the no longer quite human, and depending on your definition of abhuman, like why is the Afriel strain an official abhuman designation and Marines aren't, if they're both super soldiers? So then it comes down to, is the abhumanity threshold being able to procreate? Because if so, like, doesn't gene seed count, or does it have to be that you procreate, biologically,
Naturally, yeah.
innately? Yeah. So yeah, it kind of, again, just comes down to who's talking. I'm sure that there have been, wars fought deep in the bowels of the Inquisition, as somebody was like, you know what, I think the Space Marines are mutants, right? And then just retinues all start blasting each other, and there's some faction fighting going on, but like, that there's some you know some branch of the Inquisition out there specifically tracking abhumans and mutants, and they think that they're gonna tell the Black Templars what's what, So yeah, it's like, good luck, champ.
Well, I could say this: the setting does say that Space Marines are transhuman. Transhuman physiology is one of their kind of core elements. So if a Space Marine is transhuman by the definition of the setting, by the definition of the Imperium, how is an Afriel strain or a Gland Warrior, who are abhumans, how are they not transhuman because they were human and are now something else, as
Right.
opposed to being born as an Ogryn or born as a Ratling? It's a very interesting question.
And I think, again, part of it is the procreation, where like that's the difference between a cyberpunk street samurai and a species of superhuman, right? I think is whether it happens or it was done to you, and how do they recreate that process, et cetera, et cetera. Which is also stuff that gets a little bit too sciency and philosophical for the in-universe Warhammer 40K tropes, where they're like, you're asking a lot of questions, citizen. You're really worried about mutants, aren't you, citizen? And so again, it all comes down to where you're at in the setting. But there's got to be some little ecclesiarchy monks or some inquisitorial retinues that sit down and bicker about this stuff, to lethal outcome, no doubt.
We got one more super chat from Ricky Chapman, 3377. Ricky Chapman, FYI, Rusty, is a RPG player who has numerous models showcasing his RPG party and the monsters that they face. So you would get along really well with Ricky Chapman.
Nice.
Ricky Chapman says, two of my personal favorite abhumans are the good old Longshanks, which is I believe you were discussing earlier with the low gravity, and Pelagiers, which are the fishmen of 40K.
Yeah,
I'm gonna get dogpiled for saying it out loud, but it's fishmen of 40K.
Yeah, the scales and able to breathe liquids and withstand, the pressure of the bottom of the ocean type of stuff. But they're humans, guys. It's okay. They're just humans that swim really good. That's all.
And he says he's working on kit bashing some of these for an abhuman only guard army, which that sounds awesome.
Nice. Go with God, because those sound like terrible things to have to try and kit bash. I'm thinking the Longshanks, and it's just like, oh, that would be rough, buddy. That is beyond my means. But yeah, it's definitely something that will no doubt catch you a lot of fist bumps at a tournament or something. I know I've seen, I want to say it's Victoria Miniatures has like cat-eared heads and felinid faces that you can get The felinids, of course, are not cat girls. They're humans. They just happen to have
They
evolved
might.
over time
They might be cat girls.
to,
We don't
yeah,
know.
yeah. Well, like statistically, about half of them are cat girls, and half of them are cat boys, right?
Well, the thing is, we just don't know enough about felinids, and
Yeah.
we're gonna talk about them on this particular program. But
Yeah.
the short version is we know very little about felinids, and they could be anything from anime-esque waifus all the way to near feral claw maniacs who want to just tear you apart because they're natural hunters. So we don't know. Like, we're not sure.
Yep. But then the other thing is, again, because the Warhammer setting is so absurdly huge, it could be both, right? It could be that one world has them where they're feral and just innately predatory, and maybe another has them where a felinid auxilia settled down when a regiment got the right of conquest, and maybe 1,000 years later, those ones have become more civilized, and there you've got your anime waifus. So there's room in the setting for either extreme. But yeah, I know of at least one third-party miniature company that specifically sells parts to try and do some conversions.
Yes, I am an enthusiast of alternative options for such things.
Yeah.
So we've said basically what abhuman means. I think generally speaking, with a few exceptions, they are human descended populations that have undergone a stable genetic divergence. But this is sometimes due to tinkering, sometimes due to extreme environments. They're still human enough. But there are some that were built and designed. According to one of my research, it says that the Imperium does recognize somewhere around 73 different stable abhuman strains, of which 46 are extinct, and around 12 or more are probably extinct, and around 15 are just like, we're not sure.
Yeah, so you're left with some that are considered constitutionally acceptable. By constitutionally, I don't mean a Bill of Rights. I mean their innate physicality. So yeah, and then then there's some where when you talk about the ones that are extinct, you can talk about like beastmen and squats until 5 years ago or whatever.
Beastmen have a kill team.
Yeah.
Beastmen got a kill team recently.
Did they?
Yeah, and there's a guy in Necromunda called Gore Halfhorn who is
him I knew about.
Beastman mercenary. So they're back in at least to some degree. And there's Zangors in the new Thousand Sons army. So the Beastmen are definitely back in 40K, and we're going to discuss them. But first I want to talk about, there's kind of a division. There's the so-called major abhuman strains, and then the minor abhuman strains. And the major ones are the ones that are really well known and that they have models and that we have a lot of lore about them. And then the minor ones are the rest, basically. So the major strains, we have talked about a few of these already, but just briefly, I'll list them and then we'll kind of go through them. There's the Ogrins and the Ratlings, which we have discussed. There's the Beastmen, which we just briefly touched on. The Squats and or Votan, or the Kin, if you will. And then lastly, there's the Navigators, who occupy a very specific zone in the Venn diagram between abhuman and mutant.
And Psyker. And so yeah, they're always an interesting one because they have such a distinct and absolutely pivotal role in the setting. And if they try to do anything else with their life, they're totally getting murdered, right? So they're interesting in that they've got this third eye, and they're able to sense the holy light of Terra. The one that Ross is showing off is from the fairly recent Rogue Trader game. I'm going to say recent. I don't know. It's probably 5 years old by this point. Time is an illusion. I'm terrible at keeping track of how old some nerd stuff is. It all blurs. But yeah, one of the potential retinue members is a navigator, and it was a really cool look at kind of the variety of those powers, in addition to the plot device level power of navigating. Yeah, so yeah, they are super duper on thin ice in the Imperium, in terms of being freaky deaky mutant, freaky deaky psyker, freaky deaky abhuman, but they're important enough that they're this like super duper honored, you know, kind of unique caste in the social structure of the Imperium, where humanity overlooks those differences, um, in a in kind of a way that almost breaks character if you look at how they treat other mutants that aren't useful, right? So I think it speaks to the necessity of navigators.
Yeah, they are in fact so necessary that they wield an insane amount of power in the Imperium. The Navigator houses, the Navis Nobilitae, as it's called, they wield immense power. They are very wealthy. They're very influential. And let's be frank, no ship goes anywhere without a navigator for very good reasons in the Imperium. At least for interstellar voyages. I mean, you can sail around a system without a navigator, but if you want to go further than a solar system, you will need one. And because of that, they are, I would argue, the most accepted and respected. Oh, yeah. I would argue navigators actually can get they can snap their fingers and have regular humans do their bidding. So,
and I'd say that they are certainly more accepted than other psychers as well. When you think about, you know, the sanctioned psychers that serve in the Imperial Guard, you definitely have, I'd say, an abnormal amount of potent psychers serving in the Inquisition. But there, I think the authority comes from being an Inquisitor, and that's what lets them also not be dead for being a psycher, right? Is they have access to the halls of power enough to get training and get sanctioned, and then to have individual authority. But if you just look at, like I said, you know, your average kind of sanctioned psyker in the Imperial Guard, the guy that's like, hey, what's up? I'm also a walking lightning bolt, right? Like they bring one thing to the table and that's it. Like that guy, everybody in his squad is perpetually ready to put one in his brain. Whereas the navigators, the shoe is very much on the another foot. You know, they're so just necessary to something the size of the Imperium working.
Well, it would be erroneous to lump navigators in with psychers. Navigators do have supernatural abilities through their warp eye, and they do have a connection to the warp. But to be clear, there is a very distinct difference between a psyker and a navigator, and this is one of the reasons. During the Dark Age technology, the Age of Strife is one of the places where we get navigators. Nobody really knows how they were made, but they know that they were made during this very tumultuous period, and that the genetics that make up a navigator are very, very stable as far as what they are. I mean, they do get more mutated over time, so it's stable for a certain definition of stable, but they do not explode into demons, and they do not allow demons into the mortal realm like a psyker does. There's good reasons why you would want to keep a gun around on a psyker, because if he loses his focus at the wrong moment, he could explode into a demon,
turn into a bloodthirster or whatever. But I do think, though, still in Imperial society, that's kind of an academic distinction, with as backwards and, you know, purposefully paranoid, some would say rightfully paranoid, you know, I still think that it is the status and importance of navigators that makes that distinction matter more than that distinction existing. Like, even if they don't kind of explode into demonic power on a miscast, I think is secondary to why they are treated well, compared to the fact that the Imperium falls apart without them.
That's a good point.
for an example of what I would say is kind of a comparable, you know, real life comparison, Comparable comparison, really killing it today. But I would say look at like people that control the oil industry, right? Where you've got one industry that has such a chokehold on everything else, except in 40K, there are no alternative power sources, right? Like nothing else can even try to do what oil does. So if you think about everything that the oil industry is involved in, including the plastics that are needed to try and make other, alternative energy sources, right? Because there's all of industry and all of transport that are reliant upon oil. So there's a reason that this small group of people have the enormous influence and social latitude and financial power, et cetera, that they have. And I can't think of a single kind of group or role in real life that comes anywhere near as close to how much it would just shut down modern humanity if it was gone, the same way that if navigators all vanished, the Imperium would fall apart.
Well, yeah, we had an episode called "What if the Emperor Died?" And one of the biggest things is you lose the Astronomicon, and when you lose the Astronomicon, you lose interstellar travel, which becomes a real big problem. Well, you don't lose it, but it vastly diminishes.
Yeah, it'd be like if everyone that knew how to fly a plane died, and then you're like, look, we got some people that can try it, but they don't know what they're doing, and also they're blindfolded, so the odds of them landing are pretty slim.
So we can do a whole episode, and we will do a whole episode on navigators because they're awesome. I just briefly wanted to touch on them as they do occupy a weird space where they're both mutant and a subspecies of human at the same time.
Yeah.
And are one of the most well-known, and they have models and various other things. There's that. But we should probably switch gears to talk about what is considered probably one of the most common, most well-known, and most well-developed abhumans, the Ogrins.
Yeah.
Homo sapiens gigantus, as they are called.
Which, again, they're totally humans, you guys. They are not fantasy ogres at all. They're just extra big, strong humans. Mind your business.
All right. So Ogrins, they are very physically strong. They're physically stronger than a Space Marine power armor, which that's a hell of a thing, first of all.
Yeah. That's not nothing, right? If you just look at raw physical power, you've got just this kind of incomparable baseline of Ogren strength that humanity just can't compare to.
And the Ogrins, they typically evolve on cold, barren, or high gravity worlds, prison worlds, basically places where bulk and strength are essential for survival. And the environment, at least according to the Imperium, the environment is what shaped them and gave them their characteristic size and toughness. So how tall, like if I were to ask you, Rusty, how tall would you picture an Ogren to be on average?
See, that's interesting because I know that there are issues of tabletop scale that are certainly going to play up. I want to say they're like 13 or 14 feet ish, like well over double human. I would want to say, but I don't know. Yeah, I'll go with 13 feet. It's a nice lucky number.
Well, there's probably some Ogren who do reach 13 feet, but the average Ogren is about 10 feet tall. It's about 3 meters. Okay. They have extremely thick skin, dense muscle, and bone, and they can essentially shrug off injuries that would kill a normal human 3 times over, which is pretty wild.
Yeah, I remember there's a I do not remember what book it's in, but I remember there was a story where Tyranids fight and are able to claw open a Chimera troop transport only to find that it's full of Ogren and they just get torn to pieces. So like they're the prize waiting inside the the hard candy shell was not a prize at all. So yeah, like they're just absurdly strong, absurdly tough. For a good example of them in recent kind of media or interactive media, I guess you'd call it, you've got Dark Tide, of course, where they're one of the core, I guess, classes or archetypes. I don't remember the exact name the game used for the character types. But yeah, they've got some pretty interesting stuff going there, and they definitely have the vibe, right, where they look different and they feel different and they play different than any other character type. And they've got some cool voice lines.
Oh, well, the voice lines are written by a fellow Black Library author and friend of mine, Sarah Cockwell. She was one of the ones that wrote some of the barks, and I give her mad credit because those barks at Dark Tide are really good. They're really good, yo.
Yeah, they are absolutely essential to maintaining the feel of the universe in a way that I have not seen in a video game in a long time. You just kind of need that steady trickle to not get lost in the gameplay and just feel like it's another shooter.
Agreed.
Right? Because they could have very easily had the home base dripping in lore and vibe, and then gameplay looking cool, I guess, but that constant audio reminder and the commentary from the characters as different things happen, or you spot this, or you go to this place or that, and just the idle dialogues are just this steady trickle of flavor that absolutely make the game to me.
I'm going to read a couple of super chats before we forget about them.
Oh,
our
yeah.
good friend Biofoot, Biofoot 7874, our local fishman enthusiast, I should point out. He says there's only one species of abhuman I want to know. I guess I suspect I know which one that is, Biofoot, and we're going to talk about him. Biofoot 7874 again says, and it's the Muffin Men in the Drury subsegmentum. That's the ones he wants to know about, is the Muffin Men. Do you know the Muffin Men of the Drury subsegmentum?
I do not, but I'm afraid you're going to launch into Do You Know the Muffin Man song that still haunts me 30 years after I haven't been in Boy Scouts. So I feel like it's a setup to that joke, but I will admit I do not get that reference off the top of my pointy little head.
Oh no, he's absolutely just Muffin Men. It's the song. So I think, well, as a fun side note, and we will talk about Pelagears, but Pelagears are almost Ogren sized.
They're huge. You know,
they're big. They're very big. So Ogren though, Ogren are so big that they are taller even than the Custodes, who are 9 feet tall in armor. So if you want to imagine the Custodes looking up to somebody, they look up to Ogren. They have to. They're like, oh, look at that guy. He's really tall.
Yeah, I guess to me, with some of their height, I think of it similarly to like Trolls and Shadowrun, where it feels like they're never standing up straight in the pictures and in the minis and stuff like that. So it feels to me like they should be taller than those official numbers. Just kind of visually and going by vibe. And I know that GW has done some really awesome stuff with Gargants and Mega Gargants over on the Age of Sigmar side of things. You know, they've got their giants there. And I'm like, maybe someday we'll get rivals to Imperial Knights, or maybe someday it would just be a dope conversion to take an Age of Sigmar Mega Gargant and then armor him up in bits of vehicle and stuff like that, and just be like, no, he's a very special Ogren. He's a Homo sapien Maximus or something that's just from this particular world. And that could be a fun proxy for an Imperial Knight, and then have like smaller ones for Sentinels, or like that'd be a pretty fun little project.
Megafauna do exist in 40K, but
yeah.
I should note that all of the strength and power and toughness and endurance that Ogrins get, that comes at the cost of their intellect. They are canonically very dim-witted. Below average human intelligence is like the top rank of
Yeah.
Ogren intelligence. And they tend toward very simple, concrete thinking.
Which
Go ahead.
I was going to say is something of an unfortunate trend when you also remember how often GW kind of turns stupidity into comedy. And when there are already some real life tropes about large people being stupid and about certain, disabilities leading to above average strength in exchange for your below average intellect. And so there's times that it can be maybe one of the parts of the game that didn't age as well as some others because things have changed a lot in the last 30, 35, 40 years with social expectations towards certain topics. I don't think if someone were to remake The Goonies, Chunk would be quite the same, or not Chunk.
Yeah, we know what you're talking about.
Yeah. So yeah, like it's a thing that it's, it's a balanced trope. It's the fantasy trope of ogres writ large. But yeah, it's also interesting in game. I still think part of the reason for it is so that the Imperial Guard officer was easy to kill. Like you couldn't just have like an Ogren leader to make life harder for your opponent. Of course, now that you've got tank commanders as an option, that part of it kind of goes away. But I feel like at a gut check level, I think early on they were like, all right, how do we keep somebody from making this guy their general? And I think they just had to make him not super smart.
Well, perhaps either feeding into or lampshading or even subverting the trope a little bit. Despite their low intelligence, Ogrins are, generally speaking, considered very loyal once indoctrinated into the Imperial Creed, and they often develop childlike devotion to the Emperor and to the officers who treat them well. Even Ogrins who fought for the War Master during the Horus Heresy did so largely because their commanders told them that we're the ones that are with the Emperor.
Yeah, and there's this real kind of soft spot / tragedy to it, and a definite sense of the Imperium has taken advantage of these guys, right? In a way that is even more than your average Imperial conscript, right? Where you've got them just this childlike kind of pure love and faith and loyalty and obedience that is then used to send them into the just worst hellholes.
Well,
and
that's very 40K though, Rusty.
Yeah, and to go, you give your life, you go fight those gene stealers while I run away, right? Is a thing. But yeah, like there's times that you can get these kind of scenes that are just like, man, that one really sucked. Like it's not the same as an Imperial Guard grizzled veteran sergeant that says, you know what, the only way to get my boys out of here is if I hold the line, right? Instead, it's like, hey, it's
Forrest
big
Gump.
dumb.
It's Forrest Gump. It's absolutely Forrest Gump.
It's like, hey, buddy, you wanna go do some Hodor for me, and they just will.
Hodor.
There's just this kind of innocence that it's just absolutely taken advantage of. But then again, like in the video game, for instance, a lot of their voice lines are some fan favorites. With just loves me to Emperor, right? And just like this kind of good-natured, again, kind of childlike, just kind of positivity that other characters don't have. So I think there's a little bit of like ignorance is bliss at play also, where sometimes in the 40K universe, having an incredibly short attention span and imagination might just be a pretty good thing sometimes. You are left with what is it? The small mind has no room for doubt.
Yes.
Like, there you go. I believe that's the quote or something close to it. And I think Ogren are a pretty chief example of that.
So Ogrins are one of the two main sources of abhumans we see. They're part of what's called the Militarum Auxilia, which is where you go when you are an abhuman and you get brought into the Astra Militarum, or the Imperial Guard. And this is a specialist branch where the abhuman units get collected and then divvied out amongst regiments. There's no such thing as an all Ogren or an all Ratling regiment, or at least that we know of. There might be, but we haven't really seen it in the lore.
There has not been on the tabletop.
Yeah, not on the tabletop.
Again, Russ, you're gonna laugh so hard when my book comes out.
I'm sure.
You're like, how did Rusty make it through this show?
And
without opening his fat mouth.
Well, let me add some caveats, because I wasn't quite finished. I was like, there aren't full regiments of abhumans that we know of, but this is what I was going to try to say, because the Imperium's been at war for so many thousands of years, 10,000 years, and because they have so many armies, I'm certain that it has possibly come down to that, either through attrition or somebody in the administratum screwing up and just sending all Ratlings go to this one planet and form a unit or whatever, or all Ogrins. And that is how you might see something like that, but it would be just very rare. It would be extremely rare in the Astra Militarum to find such a formation. That's what I was trying to get.
And again, it also comes down to what you count as a regiment.
Right.
Because if you look at how they're drafted, it's just a form of taxation. So if you've got a Ratling world, if they're going to tithe to the Imperium with, the tithe of flesh instead of just money or grain or whatever, it's gonna be all Ratlings. So I will agree that would be exceptionally rare in the Astra Militarum.
Yes.
But then you do have the
other factions
branch where, the groupings could be different.
Well, sure. I mean, if you had a world that was like a mustering world where they like some sort of staging area, okay, where the Munitorum would push all your abhumans together before they get divvied out, right, like a hub, and that place come under attack, that would be kind of wild, because then you would see just serried ranks of Ogren marching to war. That would be kind of wild.
Which I think was a regimental option during like the War for Armageddon. Remember how they had like the funky specialized units in the distinct like campaign book for Armageddon? I remember they mentioned some Ogren Auxilia, and there might have been like special rules for those guys that let you have more than the normal number of units or something like that. But yeah, like there's definitely times that a regiment will skew more one way or the other in terms of that sort of thing. But yeah, they're definitely Abhuman Auxilia as the kind of core administrative branch that oversees the large groups of them. Yeah.
So Nestor Vitumbra has a comment here I'd like to read just really quick. It says, I've always assumed that the Abhuman Auxilia function similarly to stormtroopers in earlier editions. Regiments exist as administrative units, but deployments are only at the company or squad level. That's basically what we're talking about. It's a little more nuanced, but it's basically that.
Yeah, that is certainly how I picture it, where I think of them as basically being requisitioned like gear. Right, because and some of this also fits into some older lore where Imperial Guard regiments aren't supposed to be combined arms, right? There were limitations, because if you let one charismatic military leader have infantry and artillery and tanks, then that's spelling a recipe for a coup, right? Whereas if they only have infantry, you know how to beat that. And if they only have artillery, you know how to beat that. There's this kind of rock, paper, scissors in the Imperium, but that is definitely softened over time to sell toys, right? Because it turns out people want a diverse force, but often in the lore, you'll see if they have like a regimental write-up, it'll be like, oh, these tanks are on loan from the such and such, a sister battalion, right? Where they're theoretically not part of the regiment itself. And definitely the Ogren and Ratlings have always been treated the kind of the same way, where
Sure.
they're not quite just another unit in that regiment on paper.
Right. And I don't want to go down a too far a tangent, but I will
Yeah,
just briefly say the Astra Militarum is such a huge organization, and it's been around for such a very long time that the way things work at a certain time, at a certain place, with a certain group is not necessarily true for the whole thing at any particular given time. For example, we know that the Cadians, they do field everything. They have
yeah.
Cadian sentinels, they have Cadian tanks, they have Cadian infantry, they have Cadian artillery.
Well, and
So
it's not just a matter that they have it, but they also allow them to serve together.
yeah, that's
It is
yeah.
the exception. Is the weird
Well,
part.
I mean, I'm just saying sometimes it's an exception and sometimes that's the standard. It
Yeah,
depends because we're talking about such a big swath of time in so many worlds. Anyway, that's the
yeah,
tangent.
and
Let's
that's also the excuse for a lot of other variations. I don't want to say retcons, but variations in the lore. Is that frankly, it is absurd to try and picture how large the Imperium is. So yeah, there are definitely always policies and then exceptions. And remember, again, early on, it was a little more satirical and that sort of thing. So yeah, but there's variations to regiments and how they're supposed to be laid out.
all right. Godzilla Rex 100 asks Arcadian Abhumans. Okay, this is not a Cadian stream and this is not about the Imperial Guard, but I will try to answer this very quickly. Cadians are kind of they're moving in that direction a little bit because they all have violet eyes, thanks to their presence near the Eye of Terror, or at least most of them have violet
Yeah,
eyes. I
which
think.
it's
Yeah.
another one that's kind of changed over time,
Yeah.
where it used to just be like they could have them, and then it's become kind of more. I mean, when was the last time you saw an Irish character in fiction that wasn't a redhead? Right? Like it's become kind of the stereotype
Yeah.
where Cadians have that. But yeah, I think an argument could be made that Cadians are abhumans or are at least a strain of mutant.
Right.
I think good fucking luck if you want to
Right.
go tell
Well,
a Cadian that. It
well,
might not be as bad as calling a space marine a mutant, but
let's
like you're still gonna have to fight a duel or something.
well, opinions can change over time. A good example from the real world is that left-handed people for a long time were considered sinful. It was just that's in their nature. They clearly they're left-handed. That means they're bad, right? We know that is not the case now. The
Yep.
Imperium, for all its faults, the Imperium does occasionally seem to acknowledge some facts about life. So
Every now and then, but again, it always comes down to who the local authority figure is,
true.
because there's always room for the super fanatics that will completely go by the letter of the Imperial Infantryman's uplifting primer that says, you know, the penalty for whatever crime is death, right? Like, so yeah, it all depends on who's on shift that day.
So I got a
Uh,
couple of super chats to read really quick before we
yeah,
lose them. Stephen Lucas, 8836. Thank you, Stephen Lucas. Appreciate your support. So many Inquisitors are also psychers. Feels like about 1/3, with the other third being religious fanatics. So do Inquisitors protect their own bias? No, not always. Some Inquisitors hate themselves for being psychers, and some
yeah,
are like, nope, this is totally fine. This is how we are supposed to be. It just depends. Inquisitors are they're the very extreme example of wildly diverse individuals within a similar faction.
Yeah, and I'd say that the biggest thing Inquisitors have in common is that they have the absolute authority to enforce and also kind of decide what is heretical and not, right? Like that's their job. So that's where you also have those extremes. So they're in a unique position that they decide what's heretical and what needs to be put down for being a mutant and killed for being a psyker and blah, 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 and who is a witch and what is too much trucking with Xenos, right? Like the Ordo Xenos is all about killing anybody else that's using Xenos technology, but they do so with Xenos technology sometimes. You know, like their distinctive toys are that. So there's they're definitely in a unique position because they get to decide what's legal and not, and they're the ones that enforce it. So it's a really weird little cross section of authority and discretion that then also is not at all consistent because two different inquisitors have and often do disagree on what counts as heretical, and they'll just kill each other. So yeah, it's good times. It's a rational system that's working as intended. Peak efficiency.
Mornington Cressa says, I didn't think they'd burn me as a witch, says local witch burning promoter.
Yeah, exactly and precisely that. So yeah, there's some of it is that they have that latitude to decide what counts as heretical, and some of it I think is that they then also have access to the resources to train and kind of protect their psychers, right? In that sort of way, and they can kind of use their authority to buy time for a rogue psyker to maybe get sanctioned and then brought up in the Inquisition. So it's, I think of the ratio of psychers in the Inquisition almost as like the ratio of doctors in a hospital, right? Like statistically, it's only X amount of people, you know, maybe 1 in 100 or whatever, that is a doctor. But if you're looking for a doctor in a hospital, you have a little bit better odds. And I think it's kind of the same thing with the Inquisition and psychers as a confluence of the privilege that they have, the rogue nature that they have of just being on the move all the time, right? That makes it harder for other people to enforce laws. And then the access to get implants that will augment psyker abilities or limit it. You know, so it's definitely a convergence point of several different layers of privilege and opportunity and that sort of thing.
Well, as someone who knows a little bit about the Inquisition, I can say Stephen Lucas is probably overselling it a little bit. Like a third being psychers is probably a little high. But you made a very, I would like to use your metaphor there because the hospital and the doctors is a pretty good way to think of it for the Inquisition and psychers. There are enough psychers in the Inquisition to make it kind of like that. Now, we do have a super chat from Chris M77. Thank you, sir. By the way, super chat, the best way to support our channel. They're the best way to keep us doing what we do. So we're very grateful for all of your support. Chris M says, no question. Just wanted to say thanks for the stream and wanted to say guests are cool. Well, thank you, Chris M. And I should point out there's several comments in here who are very excited about your idea for giants in 40K.
Wanting to do the Imperial Knights with some Sentinel Walkers and some what are they, armatures? Is that what the smaller ones are called? Yeah. I'm like, I just feel like it'd look pretty cool. It would be a fun project and would get you, once again, lots of fist bumps and stuff at a tournament. And honestly, maybe even like a GW spread, like, you know, because they still do that every now and then.
They do, yeah.
Like that'd be pretty cool, yeah. So just go ahead and call them the Zimmerman Regiment, and I will take 20% of your praise and glory. You can just forward it to me.
Email your comments too.
Yeah.
No, I'm not going to do that. Gideon Gleeful, thank you very much, Gideon Gleeful. He says, weirdly, the Beastmen are one area where the Imperium of 40K is actually more tolerant than the Warhammer Fantasy Empire. This is true, and it's a very fun thing to point out that the Beastmen of 40K are marginally more acceptable than they are in the Empire of Warhammer Fantasy. Very good point.
And there, I think it was partially from older lore that was kind of torn on how chaosy these guys are or aren't. Where it was almost, are they abhumans or are they all mutated by chaos, right? In kind of early days. But yeah, then it comes down to the like, do they know their place? Right. And with them, much like with Ogren, it's like, hey, as long as they're doing what they're supposed to be doing, we don't care about them cloven hooves. But if they start to think for themselves and try to learn to use magic, then suddenly there's Zangor, and you need to purge them for falling to Zinch and being tainted into freaky little birdmen or whatever. But yeah, it's like, as long as they're doing their job and are giving up their twisted little lives for the cause of the Imperium, like, cool, that's fine. We'll let them hang out and die.
Funnily enough, the Space Marine chapter we came up with are also funny little birdmen, and there's evidence that the Raven Guard has several vastly mutated gene seed implantations that they tried to do during the Horus Heresy that resulted in some freaky birdmen as well. But this is not a stream. This is not a stream about mutant space marines.
All right. I have some Raven Guard lore also bouncing around in my head for NDA reasons.
Oh,
so I do know some fun facts about some of that.
Well, if you'd like to share, we're not gonna have you on every episode. So if you want to share it now here about Raven Guard, go for it.
It's just a fun fact related to the failed mutations, is that there's kind of a wing of their kind of home tower, which is where Corvus Corax locked those failed mutations up, and then is said to have killed them all with his bare hands. But sometimes, because 40K is spooky, you can hear noises and stuff. But the veterans of the first company are an honor guard that holds that door like once a year. So if you're looking for a reason to have Blade Guard or Stern Guard veterans all dressed up fancy, like your average kind of honor guard from less practical Space Marines, there you go. It's like a fancy honor guard Class A uniform that they wear for that. And they just happen to be in the middle of that when you had to go to a tournament. So that's why your Blade Guard are all dressed up, instead of just being normal Raven Guard with oversized Bowie knives or something. So yeah, just a weird little factoid there.
Fun fact from the Heresy era is that they had their first company was the Deliverers, which were these absolutely awesome Terminator close combat specialists who never really got to go to war the way they wanted to, because Corax was like, you know what I don't need? I don't need a bunch of slow, unsubtle Terminators walking around with lightning claws and thunder hammers, letting everybody know where we are.
Yeah. Can we get a 23andMe on these guys? I don't think they're my kids. I'm not sure. I think they're someone else.
Yeah, so they were the unfortunate first company that was like not so beloved by the Primarch. Yeah. They were anyway, going back to Ogrins. So Ogrins in the Militarum Auxilia, they are close combat shock troops. They are bodyguards. They spearhead assaults. They are your big tough guys that you throw into the melee, or you use to protect your commander from being meleeed. However, I should point out that they do appear outside of the Astra Militarum as well. The Imperial Navy sometimes employs them as cargo movers. Very specifically, there's a book by Dan Ebnett. It's the follow-up to Double Eagle. I forget what it's called. I just read it. It's really good.
City, isn't it?
Oh yeah, Interceptor City. Thank you.
Interceptor
City. So in the novel Interceptor City, they have an Ogren who literally just gets a forklift and moves fighters around. Because
they gave him a forklift. That's nice.
Yeah, I know.
Instead of just picking them up. Maybe a strain of Ogren that are aboard fleet vessels for too long. Like, what if you get Longshank Ogren, and we got our Gargants now?
Okay.
There we go.
Wow.
Longshank Ogren. Need him to be taller. There's your excuse.
Other roles that we commonly see Ogrins in are slave soldiers or brawlers in some sort of imperial underworld.
Yeah, pit fights and whatnot. Yeah.
And occasionally as enforcers in hive cities for various organizations. But when they're on the battlefield, they're typically equipped with flak armor, which is scaled up to their size. They have those shotguns he was talking about that are also clubs called Ripper guns. They're automatic shot. They're nasty. They fire whole. It's like a 3-round burst of shotgun shells that are this big.
Except they're also super-sized shotgun shells. So think like, I don't know, an 8-gauge or something silly like that. And yeah, just picture multiple of those just hosing an area down.
They do get frag grenades, and then of course there's the Bullgrins who have these big slab shields and clubs that are your melee versions.
And Bane face masks.
Yes,
they get some Bane looking face masks on there. Yeah, they're definitely to a lot of Imperial Guard players, especially in editions of the game that are sometimes more about stand on a circle than they are about just kill the other team. Something like Ogrin is really important because you can't just get by with your toughness 3 5-up saves to take and hold ground. So a lot of people will use, an armored fist squad in a chimera to take territory, and then the next chimera is full of Ogrin that will take some different killing, and then suddenly on the game table you can make your opponent choose where to shoot their anti-tank guns, because is it going to be at the tank over there or at the Ogrin over here? Because your las rifle doesn't scare them very much, so you definitely have to go up a tier in firepower to threaten an Ogrin. And then if you give them a shield and stuff also, it just gets harder.
So the Administratum records list 7 different strains, different types of Ogrin, one of which I'm pretty sure is just a reference to a version of the Incredible Hulk from the 90s, which is the Gray Ogrins. And that's all we know, is that they're called Gray Ogrins.
They're just gray. Yeah, I mean, that without anything else going on for them, yeah, it's probably just a Mr. Fix-It joke.
I think so. So you mentioned boneheads earlier. There's a thing, this device that gets put in their heads and makes them smarter. They're called boneheads because the acronym for the device is the Biochemical Ogrin Neural Enhancement, or BONE, that is then put into their head, so they are boneheads.
Yep.
It's a German must have thought of this because it's so on the nose. It's a German thing. Like, German words are so very on the nose for what they are. This is what it reminds me of.
Yeah. I am 100% sure that the bonehead name existed before the bonehead justification existed.
Oh, absolutely.
But good on them for coming up with one that kind of fits. Like, that works. That's viable. I could believe that. So yeah.
Some Ogrins, of course, do serve the archenemy, the Chaos forces. There are I don't want to get too far into it. I'll just say there is one specific subtype of Ogrin called Plague Ogrins, which are diseased monstrosities bloated by the power of Nurgle. They're used by Chaos cults and Chaos Space Marines as, well, in the same roles as Ogrin. They're sent as spearheads and big tough things for you to fight.
There's a really cool one in like a Traitor Imperial Guard box set. I remember it was, there's like a super cool fallen commissar guy, but the Ogrin from that squad was also just super dope looking. Just a really great mini that is very intimidating when it's put on the tabletop near you, and it kind of reminds you again of just the size of these guys. And then if you take an Ogrin and then mutate it to make it even gnarlier in terms of being stronger and tougher, it's very much a Chaos Space Marine kind of paradigm again, where you're like, man, like, those guys were already tough. They didn't need to also mutate like that. Like, then now you're just getting silly, buddy. Like, they're just absolute beasts on the tabletop.
There is a comment I'd like to read related to your Raven Guard information.
Oh, what we got?
Morgan and Crescent says, so you're saying Korax turned his Marines into chickens and then wrang their necks. How fitting.
He choked a bunch of chickens, but I mean, he did it by himself though, so that nobody else had to get their hands dirty.
Okay, we're gonna read some super chats here. Gideon Gleeful, thank you very much, sir. Favorite Abhuman quote: "The sergeant major asked me what my job was, and I says it was to do what I was told. He said I was a genius. It gave me another medal. I likes the Imperial Guard." And that's
Yeah,
from
good
North
old
Red
Nork.
Dog.
Yep, good old Nork. Just absolute unit, and kind of the archetypal or iconic Ogren for decades now. I don't even remember. Maybe it was like Imperial Guard third
Yeah,
that he
that's
was first in, but yeah, it's definitely been a while. So
Nork's.
yeah,
Nork's been a part of the setting as long as I've been involved in the setting, which is over 20 years and almost 30 at this point.
yeah.
Yeah, at least I'd say he's definitely been around for at least 20, if not 30 years. We've got one from Sarmelian Bloodweaver. Great name, by the way. Thank you, sir, for your support. Consider Lizardman is sanctioned Ab-Terrans, where the Inquisition finds an old one ship and they assume it's old human tech and use it to spawn infinite lizards.
Yeah. I'd say if I'd say once again it comes down to if you can get away with it, you can get away with it. So like that'd be a pretty freaky like personal strike team for an Inquisitor, or just some weird little world that doesn't interact with other worlds real often. That would be an absolutely trippy Imperial Guard conversion, just slapping lizard man heads and tails everywhere. It'd be pretty cool looking.
We do know that there is some lizardmen stuff in 40k. There's a John Blanche image of a thing called a Slani, which has been in the lore, in older lore, described as one of the possible origins of the old ones and things of that nature. But
Absolutely unrelated to the slan in Warhammer Fantasy. It's no,
yeah,
no. It's just purely coincidental.
there are, as someone else pointed out in the chat, there is a lizardman like Abhuman on Necromunda called Scalies. I don't really cover them too much because they are strictly for Necromunda. And Necromunda is, as we've talked about on this channel before, is kind of 40k adjacent. It's not real. It's kind of 40k, but it's also kind of not. And
I
that's
always
the reason.
I always thought it was kind of cool as just a kind of the most 40k world, right? It's like all this stuff that makes 40k zany, that you don't necessarily get to see in other worlds, or this world might also have only scalies but not all this other stuff. But Necromunda's like, no, I've got everything. I'm your one-stop shop for weird 40k setting stuff.
That's true. And they do have just about everything. In fact, they've got some really cool versions of Gene Stealers there that you should check out. It's very Lovecraftian themed, which is really, I dig it.
I think there's an argument that the Goliaths in Necromunda are abhumans.
Absolutely. It is endlessly debated whether they are or are not abhumans.
And I think, again, it comes down to like, where do you draw the line with, implants and not skipping leg day versus being born like that? At what level? I'm going to cross the streams here, bear with me. But in Battletech, there has been some basically eugenics gene crafting for a long time with one of the factions, where they go, you know what, Ross, you're really nerdy. Hey, Rusty, you're really nerdy. We've got your DNA and we've got the technology. We're going to make a new super nerd out of you two. And I bet there'll be an even better nerd, right? Like, it's that sort of theory for hundreds of years to make the best fighter pilots and infantry soldiers and whatever. So there, you're taking humans and just combining normal humans and not really modifying them beyond that. So it's more of a choosing a mate sort of level of genetic tampering, right? Like when you hear about an Olympian marrying another Olympian, you're just like, oh yeah, no, their kid's gonna be born about level 6. That's just gonna be a peak physical human, right? So there's, you know, kind of that level of it, and it's like, when is it that level versus consistent enough mutation to be considered a mutant or an abhuman, you know? So it's, yeah, some interesting kind of philosophical questions, and also some how much has the lore even said how that happens questions, you know?
I think if anybody's listening to our show today and they take away one thing, they should take away that abhumans occupy a very gray area in Warhammer 40K lore. They
In
are a
fact, I would
very
say
gray area.
multiple gray areas, in fact, right? Like, it's like, no, they're not just one area. Yeah, there's definitely a lot going on with them, and a lot of potential for funky conversions for the tabletop and for cool stories for the RPG. And a lot of them have like just enough lore to give you a cool idea for like an RPG character or a short story thought, or, you know, whatever. And I was always a fan of that level of lore, right? Where it would be a tantalizing paragraph in a codex or something that's just enough to make you go, oh man, like those guys sound really cool. But it wasn't ever, you know, like the Horus Heresy with 800,000 books that have now shown every stage of it from 3 different perspectives, right? It's always cool when there's just this little kind of plot thread that gives you an idea for a freaky ass weird character, or a really funky little guard regiment, or what have you. And I think abhumans are all about that. You know, they're just that zone of like, here's an idea, you can make up the rest if you want, and it's fine.
Zero Daimu, thank you for your support, Zero Daimu. Zero Daimu asks, are abhumans such as Ogren civilians allowed to exist or afforded freedom of movement, or are they mass conscripted and confined to specific worlds? The answer is it depends.
I was just gonna say yes, and then leave it at that. But yeah, I'm sure there are examples of it going either way, um, and everything in between. You know, I'm sure that there are worlds where, you know, they're not even allowed to breed, or something like that on their own, right? Where you've got some weird kind of slavery situation going on, where they're bred like hounds instead of being allowed to marry or what have you, in this kind of inhuman way. And then you've probably got worlds where they're better integrated and respected, at least on the local level. And then you could tell some interesting stories there where, you know, if you're from a world that has maybe a third or half ratling population, how do those ratlings feel when they go to space to do their duty to the God Emperor, and then they find people treating them like freaky little mutants and aliens and stuff, you know? So yeah, the Imperium's a big place, and there's definitely room for both extremes of that sort of story.
It's funny, when we did our create a rogue trader and his retinue very recently, one of the questions was asked, could a ratling become a rogue trader? And as someone who knows a lot about rogue traders, I was happy to say that ratlings could, in fact, it's possible that a ratling could be a rogue trader, which would be a very unique thing in the Imperium, but it would be wonderful to see. I'd love to write that's the book I want to write, Rusty, is the ratling who's also a rogue trader.
Right? And then like, first you got to write the book that's the heist, right? Where
he steals the warrant of trade,
right? Yeah, like the ultimate, you know, burgle there, or the ultimate heist to somehow be
Burn
chosen as somebody's, you know. But yeah, like that'd be a heck of a story, and it would also just be fun with like how does that rattling mind work? You know, if you take the idea of your kind of crooked Imperial Guard quartermaster, or the guy in the prison movie that can get you whatever you want, and then you make him have the authority and resources of a rogue trader, you're just like, oof, that's going to disrupt some local economies.
Yeah.
You know, like that'll be interesting wherever it goes.
Got one from Gideon Gleeful. Thank you again, sir. You've been very helpful today. He says, "Are Ogrins stronger than Space Marines?" Yes, they are. Not like by a huge amount, but they are.
Yeah. I think you certainly argue that Space Marines use it more efficiently, and that sort of thing. But I'd say, yeah, like just in raw brute strength, Ogren got him beat.
And we've got this question from Skylar Martin, 4298. Thank you, Skylar Martin. When it comes to lore, gray is my favorite color. Make it complicated, add more nuance, introduce a rule everyone follows, and then talk about how they don't.
Yep. And that's part of, to me, of one of the kind of key mindsets that I try to have when I'm writing fiction, whether it be 40K or any place else, is if you try to go into detail and explain a policy, or go into detail and explain the interior of a Rogel Dorn, or go into detail and say what a rule is, or just, you gotta always say, like, on this world, this is the authority you've got, or this type of Dorn, this model, this pattern of it happens to have this exact crew, right? Like, you always want to be careful making your broad sweeping statements, because the setting is a big enough place that somewhere it's the opposite of that.
Just to quickly wrap up Ogrins before we move on, there are a couple of worlds that are well known to produce Ogrins. One's called the Krork. Krork is the name of the world. The Ogren Auxilia from Krork. It's a high gravity steppe world. It's known for a particularly warlike culture and long service as frontline troops in the Armageddon sector. This is something he was discussing earlier. Yeah. But my favorite source of Ogren is the planet Monglor. Monglor is the significant portion of this world's population has rebelled and now fights against the Imperium, which forces Space Marines of the Angels of Redemption to intervene. So you do have Space Marines versus Ogren on Monglor, if you want to check that out.
Which is, it's probably interesting for the Space Marines, where, they probably have to kind of almost treat them like orcs, but not quite, and almost maybe treat them like Tyranids, but not quite. Like it's probably an interesting tactical problem for the Space Marines to try and deal with there.
And so we have talked a little bit about ratlings. Just to briefly go over them, they are called Homo sapiens minimus. And ratlings are short, very lightly built. They have hairy feet, and they are stereotypically portrayed as hedonistic, gluttonous, and larcenous, which may or may not have some kernels of truth.
And it could also kind of be a nature versus nurture, where just fantasy hobbit level love of food, that alone can be considered hedonistic and gluttonous by Warhammer 40K standards, right? Like, just, they have 2 breakfasts. Who the hell do they think they are, right? Like, that alone could be enough for the first guy to write stuff down about ratlings to just write off the whole abhuman species as these worthless gadabout mayflies that sit and do nothing, but yeah, there's definitely some nature versus nurture at work there, I think.
Hawk points out, and also I think Godzilla X pointed out, that Krork is said to have been the name of the orcs before they were orcs, and it's possible there's some kind of connection there. We're not sure, but it's interesting. So the ratlings they're unusually well integrated for abhumans. In fact, they're full citizens of the Imperium. There's dedicated ratling formations. Imperial society tends to treat them with suspicion and contempt, but they are quite possibly the abhumans who fit in the best and the most in the largest array of social situations.
Yeah, I'd say so, because with navigators who are the most influential and powerful and kind of safe abhumans, they only have it because of this one job, right? You're not going to just see a navigator hanging out. They're not going to have the options of like what they're trained in type of thing as much. And with Ogren, who have this tremendous physicality that allows them a multitude of jobs and positions, they're limited mentally, and by the stereotypes about their limitations, right? So the stereotypes exacerbate the existing flaw. But with Rattlings, there's no sort of mental deficiency or deep-rooted, flaw other than just being small. So, you're not going to see them real often in Ogren jobs, but they're perfectly capable of working fancy machinery, as much as the next guy, or, cooking food, or being a surgeon, or, what have you. And then the fact that they're small makes them pretty good at getting into places that they're not supposed to be and sneaking around and all that stuff. So yeah, like they're at different social strata, different social expectations. I would say different responsibilities more than, I'd say any other abhuman.
Well, it may be in inverse to the Ogrins. Rattlings are often considered sharp-witted and cunning.
Yeah.
So that's kind of fun. Now, we did get a question from, actually a comment from Micah, who says, let's be real, Rattlings are tolerated because they're master chefs. That's it. Because they can make a 5-star meal out of a can of corpse starch.
they do really like their cooking.
Yeah.
and making it livable for everybody else.
So we should talk. One of the other major strains, and this is something we were being asked about in the comments, is the Beastmen in 40K. The Beastmen, of course, originated in the Rogue Trader book, the first edition of Warhammer 40K. So they're very old, in terms of lore. So what are they called? They're called Homo sapiens varietas. They are the very widely, if it looks like it could be maybe possibly a furry, it's also possibly a Beastman.
Yeah, I wonder where they draw the line between Beastman and Felinid.
Right? That's a great question. Like, are Felinids just a version of Beastman? We're not sure. Hell, are Pelargir just a version of Beastman?
Yeah.
But what we do know is that the Beastmen in 40K do appear at least similarly, at least cosmetically appear very similar to the Warhammer Fantasy Beastmen. They are mostly goats or minotaurs or
kind of satyr vibes.
Yeah, exactly. They are described as the most bestial and inhuman abhuman, which means that's kind of their extreme, is that they're the least human looking of all the abhumans.
Yeah, and then I think they're often kind of thought of similarly to Ogren, in terms of their mentality, but in a different disrespectful way.
Well, typically they're seen as aggressive. They have poor discipline, and their behavior tends to be very crude. At least that's how the Imperium sees them. Chaos, of course, happens to recruit Beastmen all the time, often because the Imperium doesn't tolerate them super well. They're not tolerated like Rattlings are, even though, as was pointed out, the Imperium tolerates Beastmen more than the Warhammer Fantasy Empire tolerates Beastmen.
Yeah. I know there's different flavors of Beastmen for each Chaos God. I think kind of the only ones that I would call popular or common on the tabletop and in most of the lore that folks will run into would be the Zangor, which are the freaky deaky bird plus goat men, which also just they've got some fantastic models between Age of Sigmar and the 40K stuff right now. Like there's some pretty cool looking stuff going on with Tzeentch in general. Tends to have a really cool, sleek, and also ornate vibe going that I find aesthetically pleasing. And yeah, the Zangor are just like, like those guys are freaks. That's cool. Like they look pretty badass.
The Imperium has at times granted the status of stable abhumans to beastmen, and other times has considered them enemies. It has not been a consistent thing over the period of the lore or even in the history that beastmen have been either okay or not okay by the standards of the Imperium. But we do know that during the Great Crusade, they were recruited into the Imperial Army, that's what they called the military back then, which was everything all together basically. And they were used as assault infantry. They were valued for their ferocity, but they were considered undisciplined and, most importantly, expendable.
Yeah. I like to think that they, when the need is great enough, beastmen are abhumans. Like if you happen to just need troops, then you're like, yeah, no, they're totally abhumans, you guys. But if you just got a bunch of feral world humans that are gonna do the same job, then you're like, yeah, no, beastmen are filthy, disgusting mutants. Right? Like it's probably a kind of a matter of pragmatism and or statistics where you're like, oh, 51% of the beastmen we've seen have been chaos mutants also. So we're just going to kill all the beastmen forever, right? Like it's going to be the sort of thing that varies from system to system and, time period to time period. But also cool conversions, though. Definitely some neat tabletop potential there for some pretty funky looking minis.
Well, I bring this up because, we were just talking about how the Ratlings are very integrated into Imperium society and are generally like very acceptable. Beastmen are the opposite end of that spectrum. They are heavily marginalized, and often they're considered deeply suspicious because of the fact that none of them look alike. The fact that they look a lot like mutants, the fact that inquisitors and ecclesiarchs alike tend to treat beastmen as heretics or potential heretics, despite being reliable citizens, simply because of the fact that they look so different than a typical citizen.
Yeah. Sometimes blindered, ultra-religious fascist states make bad decisions. So like sometimes you kind of have a self-fulfilling prophecy of beastmen as heretics and rebels. So you treat them badly enough, you end up with heretics and rebels. And it certainly isn't unique to beastmen for the Imperium to do that, but they do it more often. I'd say definitely.
So yeah, the Beastmen were introduced in Rogue Trader as kind of shock troops for the Imperial Guard, but later on, there were rules to field Beastmen through a regimental doctrine. And the Lost in the Damned book includes, or lists, I should say. I think these were for the end of third edition for the Black Crusade that didn't actually happen. That's now a different timeline. Anyway, I think they appeared there as well. Specific rule sets for fielding beastmen are kind of gone up until very recently when they did the kill team, which is really awesome. That's why they're kind of bringing them back. The Games Workshop had distanced 40K from fantasy quite a bit over the last several years.
There's been some kind of corporate siloing going on as opposed to the 90s era of lol, let's do this in space.
Well, I think it's interesting because it suggests that they're returning to the lore in a much more visible and major way than they have in a very long time. And that's really, really cool because the Imperial doctrine, as far as the lore says, was kind of hardened against abhumans. And at one point, the Dark Angels wouldn't even fight alongside them. Like they'd just be like, no, screw those guys, fortunately, that's no longer common lore for the Dark Angels. And some material suggested that the Beastmen were deeply devout. They saw the Emperor as a harsh, vengeful god, and that fighting brutally to atone for their perceived impurity, they would offer up their blood and heads of his enemies, which, I mean, that's very 40K.
Where again, there's a distinct kind of flavor to their interaction with the faith. and their role as described to them by the ecclesiarchy, where these days we mostly see it with like the Death Corps of Krieg, right? Where they've got an idea of the faith of the God Emperor as this kind of original sin. We are all guilty. We need to work this off mindset. And you'll often see that with the Beastmen, the Ratlings, the Ogren, where it's the same sort of thing, where it's like, you messed up by not being born in his blessed image. Prove your loyalty by dying. And there you go, right? Which is unfortunate. That's not super cool of the ecclesiarchy.
Oh no, well
which is like the ecclesiarchy.
It's I mean that's part of the setting, is that the Imperium is just awful and terrible. Scutari Boy, reading some super chats now. Scutari Boy, thank you for supporting us. He says, why aren't Vindicares, talking about the assassins, why aren't Vindicares Ratlings? Because also Vindicares are snipers, which is the connection here. And he asks, is the Imperium stupid? The Imperium is very stupid, first of all.
Second, sometimes they are. Like on the tabletop, not in the lore. But I know they did a special Christmas mini. I want to say it was 2024. That was like 2 Ratlings. There was something provisioned. I think well provisioned. And there were a lot of people using that as a Vindicare on the tabletop. And it's like, yep, there you go. There's your use for it. But I think it would also be a really cool conversion to just do like a little miniature Vindicare looking like Snake Eyes G.I. Joe dude that just happens to be a little short, pudgy guy. Complete black bodysuit, but then like the little hairy feet sticking out. Right? I think that'd be pretty awesome.
The short version about Vindicares not being Ratlings, we don't know the answer. I'm going to speculate that Vindicares and the temple that produces them was created at a period of time where we didn't know Ratlings existed, maybe. And secondly, I am speculating, guessing that the processes via which you are transformed from a human into a Vindicare may not work on the physiology of a Ratling. I don't know. I'm just guessing.
I'd say yet another lore reason would be that the Officio Assassinorum demands, only the most human of humans, which could have grown out of the implants not working. But, with as much fear as they have of any assassin kind of going rogue, right? And like they can only trust this lethal power to the most, mindful and obedient of servants. They probably would say no to abhumans. But of course, now my mind is racing as I think of just hilarious abhuman miniature conversions. Right? Like I said, I think the little Vindicare is still my favorite though. Just having him in that sleek black bodysuit, but the little hair feet sticking out. I'm like, damn it! Now I got to do this. Like,
Morty to Cresta says Ogrid Eversore. Oh, that's a scary idea.
Yeah, that'd be terrifying.
And we got one more super chat from Skylar Martin, 4298. Thank you, Skylar Martin. Guardsman, thank goodness we have the Beastmen here who are expendable. Unlike me, right, Commissar?
Yeah.
Right?
The answer is, who gave you leave to make eye contact and speak to me? Good old commissars.
I don't know if there's much more to say about the Beastmen as far as abhumans go.
Yeah, I think they're maybe the best current example of the lore changing over the years. Aside from the squats, I'd say maybe the squats are the most extreme example because they were just declared extinct and then lol JK they're back. Whereas with Beastmen, it's just kind of fluctuated over the years with how common they are, how acceptable they are, that sort of thing. But I think again that speaks in the lore to just the absurd vastness of the setting. So you could certainly hand wave it away and say that your Beastmen have always been here. rather than it being a new thing or what have you.
So we've covered, and for anybody who's just joining us now, we have actually talked about the squats as the Leagues of Votann briefly. That is a can of worms that needs its own episode, the Leagues of Votann and the squats. But with that, we have actually covered the major abhuman strains, and now we can talk about the freaky stuff, the weird stuff, the minor abhuman strains. I would like to start with the two most unusual abhumans you can imagine. That is the Troths and the Pelagiers. The Troths, Homo sapiens verdantis, as they are called. They are a strain from the forest world of Verdant. They are described as green people with oaken skin and arboreous, almost dryad-like appearance. They can draw nutrients from their homeworld and apparently cannot safely leave their planet, and yet they still tie to the Imperial Guard. I don't know how much long. I mean, is there a shelf life on Troths when you bring them into the Guard? Do they, or do they have like a garden that they like plant them in? I'm really curious how this works.
Yeah, how do they do they specifically tithe to the Guard, or do they just tithe to the Imperium, which could be food or whatever other taxes?
Oh, did we just find out where corpse starch comes from?
I mean, or you could have just found an alternate source of Nowwood for the God's Ghost fans. Guys, I got good news and bad news. But well, yeah,
if you're vegan, you get the Troth corpse starch.
Yeah. And again, you could do some just absolutely absurd conversions with this, with some of the Age of Sigmar minis and stuff like that. But yeah, you've got your they're totally just humans, you guys. Freaking treant dudes. That somebody promises are just, they're just baseline humans. They're still just humans, we promise. So yeah, pretty weird little dudes.
Yeah, we don't know much about them, but I know there is the next strain is the Pelagiers, and they are of very strong interest to at least one of our lore seekers, Biofoot 7874, and probably several more of you. These are, I shall proudly unveil, the Fishmen in 40K, the Pelagiers.
Yeah, they're just, again, it's funky little dudes. It's at what point are you no longer human, etc., etc. Again, I think there's potentially some like crazy conversion potential, where you could do some weird stuff with your Ogren minis and try to crisscross some body parts and give them like an Admiral Akbar looking head, and go for some weird fish stuff, maybe some stuff from the Age of Sigmar line with the aquatic elves there. They might have some parts you could swap in. But yeah, these guys, it's like, if you think of everything that we said about Ogren, but then also cross them with like Atlanteans, from DC Comics or something, where they're mildly super strong, even when they look, while they're superhumanly durable, even more than they look. Yeah, like they're just some potentially some pretty OP characters is where we're going with this. Like if they were to be statted up with any regularity, these guys would be pretty badass.
So Pelagiers, this is not Kevin Costner in Waterworld. Okay, these guys are aquatic abhumans. They're adapted or possibly engineered to live on ocean-covered worlds. They're classified as Homo sapiens oceanus, and they are said to have either naturally evolved or have been genetically altered during the age of technology to survive on largely ocean planets. They are described as a recognized, sanctioned, this is important, sanctioned abhuman strain within the Imperium, but they are large, as somebody was talking about, these guys are the ones that are confined to their homeworlds. And they're almost unknown outside of these oceanic worlds. They do possess both gills and lungs, so they're fully amphibious, and they show adaptations for swimming, webbed fingers, feet, fully capable of aquatic operations. They also have scaly skin, or at least have been described as having scaly skin and heavily muscled bodies. And their biology allows them to withstand pressures that would crush a standard human. Some sources claim that they can breathe almost any liquid, which is cool, but where else would you have?
I mean, I guess it was what counts as water and
Yeah,
what doesn't in 40K. But there certainly, I don't remember the last time I saw a body of liquid in some 40K fiction and thought like, damn, I wish I could swim in that. Right? Like that's not something that really comes up very often. So I kind of feel sorry for them for that expectation of jumping into any sizable body of liquid in the 40K setting.
so yeah, Destra Vitumber says they are exclusively recruited on the moons of Innsmouth Secundus, which is that's a very good H.P. Lovecraft joke.
Yep.
That's not true though, but it's funny. They are known to work with the Inquisition, and apparently they in the Blackstone Fortress, or one of them was used to recover submerged artifacts from a deep body of liquid within a Blackstone Fortress. That may be where they breathe any liquid comes from, is that the fact that they could do this in a Blackstone Fortress, which is full of weird, unusual materials. Quite possibly that's true.
Yeah, you could just stop that sentence at weird. Just Blackstone Fortress, it's full of weird.
So yeah, there's no models of them, but these guys are cited enough in the lore that they seem to be, again, pretty well integrated, at least on the worlds where they're from. And the Inquisitor didn't show any issue in using one, so there's that. It would seem that nobody raises an eyebrow too much at Pelagiers. So yeah, there's not much else to say. There's just not a lot of lore for these guys.
Yeah, I'd say that again, that might come down to the Inquisitor and the amount of raised eyebrow instead of immediate violence that weird stuff in an inquisitorial retinue gets, right? Like that special kind of leeway that they have. Because I imagine just random Pelagier walking around somewhere is probably pretty likely to just kind of get shot at first and have questions asked later in an awful lot of corners of the Imperium. But yeah, I think, like I said, speaks to the influence of Inquisitors and the allowances that they have, that they, much like rogue traders, can just have a zany band of miscreants and freaks following them around everywhere and get in less trouble for it than your average random band of miscreants and freaks.
True. So let's talk about, I think this is going to be right up your alley, Rusty.
All right, what we got?
Let's talk about the cursed super soldiers, the Afriel strain and the Gland warriors. Which one would you like to tackle first?
I like the Afriel strain.
Go for it.
I think they're cool in part because I'm a sucker for a monochromatic paint scheme. It's just aesthetically, I think they're neat. So these guys are Homo sapiens maledictus, which that's good. We're off to a positive start. But yeah, these guys were an attempt to kind of serpentor some super soldiers into place, which, what do we got?
Randy, Rusty, you and I are of a certain age, and when you say Serpentor, you and we understand what that means.
I was going to elaborate. I wasn't assuming. But yeah, basically what they did was a shadowy cabal got DNA samples from a bunch of Imperial heroes, and we're like, well, if we put them all together, we'll make the best soldier ever. There's a whole thing in G.I. Joe that you should educate yourself on to be a well-rounded American citizen.
A man of culture.
Yeah, where Cobra did the same thing. And they had this whole series of quests where they went and got, some tissue samples from Napoleon and, Julius Caesar, and they went all around the world, and then they made a super soldier that turned out to also be the most charismatic guy, because they're like, oh damn it, we did it with leaders. Oh, we forgot. That's not what happened to these guys. Um, Instead, you kind of got um, Khan from the more recent Star Trek movie, right? Where they're a little bit faster, a little bit stronger, a little bit more intelligent, that sort of thing. But then they seem to just be cursed, which is where the maledictus part comes from. So they're also really freaky looking, all albino. But yeah, then they just have like the worst luck everywhere they go. So they're the type of dudes that are like on paper super badass, and they've got the best running time and the best bench press and the most push-ups and the best vision, right? And all that stuff. But then when it's time for them to do something, they roll ones. Which I think the whole thing might have started as somebody's joke in that way. One of the things that they did in some of the older white dwarfs was you'd often kind of get a little throwaway regiment like this, or a little throwaway race that's never been mentioned ever again. A lot of these abhumans are in like a book, right? Or a white dwarf. And I feel like the Afriel strain could have started as somebody at White Dwarf just absolutely not rolling anything better than a 2 for a couple games in a row, and then somebody was like, "Ha ha, ha lol, let's make that official." So yeah, like it feels to me like that guy that has the perfectly honed, meta tournament list that's got all the best stuff, and this army should be perfect, but then he shows up to game day and just might as well be rolling D3s, right? And that RPG character that is like super badass, but you just roll a string of natural ones as soon as you start gameplay. That's these guys. It's a regiment of that. And that's just A, hilarious, and B, terrifying. like who wants to ride on a ship with that, right? Like once word gets out, oh, those are just all enormously unlucky, and you're like, cool, I'm on a boat with them, flying through hell. Like I don't want that, So yeah, they're just pretty weird, cursed, ubermensch, albino. Yeah. Just,
So I was going to say there's some parallels to World War II Germany with the idea of the supermen that constantly have setback after setback after setback. Nestor Vitumber points out that the Afriels are basically Lamenter's light, because the Lamenters are a Space Marine chapter that constantly has setbacks after setbacks.
And also extraordinarily easier to paint. You just, because these guys are enormously pale, like not just unhealthy pale, but like alabaster skin, and then also like white hair, right? So like no yellow armor with a checkerboard pattern like the Lamenters have. No, it's just some sort of Imperial Guard bullcrap over don't bother using skin tone, right? So like boom, done. So yeah, there you go. Easy fix.
I would like to tackle the Gland Warriors if I could.
Yeah.
So the Gland, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just saying, like they're definitely kind of related. There's a reason you put them together like this.
Well, so the Afriel strain were supposed to create, the perfect guardsmen, and they were generally considered very, very good in their earliest engagements. The Gland Warriors was kind of another attempt to do an enhanced guardsman project, but this was carried out by the Adeptus Mechanicus, which is kind of interesting. The warriors of a planet called Lostock. were given drug-secreting glands and extra organs. So their bodies acted like a combat drug lab, if you will. Not unlike the juicers from Rifts. I think this is kind of somebody going, hey, what about juicers? Those are kind of fun.
Yeah, definitely riffing on that idea.
So the tech priests, they modified whole companies of the guardsmen from Lostock, and they put them on this world called Dantis 3, which was undergoing a Tyranid invasion at the time. And they were trying to see, like, hey, can our Gland Warriors survive this lethally contaminated environment and fight as, solid troops? Well, these stims and painkillers and other combat drugs that they got, it boosted their aggression, it boosted their endurance, toxin resistance, their close combat fighting performance was very high. But they were still just baseline humans with like some pretty heavy biosurgery. And well, they drove back the Tyranid forces in conditions that would have killed normal troopers, but they took horrific casualties. Only a very few survivors remained after Dantis 3. And guess where they went? The Inquisition was like, hey, you know what those guys would be great for? Bodyguards.
Yeah, they were definitely a sort of technical success. Like, on paper, we did what we set out to do. They survived fighting with the Tyranids. They were able to live in the harsh environment. They were able to be strong and tough and fast. And then we're gonna stop talking about them there. Like there is where my report to my manager ends.
Yeah, these guys were, I mean, just imagine a juicer from Rifts. If you're familiar with Rifts, again, we are men of a certain age. So if you're not familiar with Rifts, I don't blame you. No big deal. This is 40 years ago. Anyway, so these guys were they had combat drugs in their bodies at all times. They were basically always on slot or friend zone or something like that when they were kicking butt. And then they were not kicking butt, they were kind of on a much more calmer, more sedate type of drug. And because they rely on these dangerous drugs to do their work, Gland Warriors suffered mental instability and a high risk of sudden death in combat when their systems were overwhelmed by repeatedly activating their glands to try and get more and more combat drugs into their body.
Yeah, I do like to point out, though, that it says, like, often in combat, which means other times it also happens. They're just hanging out, and their heart is like, you know what? I quit. Like screw this job, man. I was not built for this. But yeah, it was the sort of thing where just sometimes the organs that are supposed to be there do not work because of the organs that aren't supposed to be there.
So due to the inquisitorial scrutiny on the project, this is a very secret group of tech priests, a small circle that put this whole thing together. And it's explicitly described as a closely guarded secret within the Inquisition and within the Adeptus Mechanicus that these guys existed and that they did this stuff, which suggests to me that this kind of manipulation is on the border. It's not quite tech heresy. It's not quite there, but it's in that direction. It's modifying the holy image of the emperor, maybe a little bit extreme.
Yeah, or again, it is tech heresy, depending who you ask and why you're asking and how much they need some Gland Warriors right then.
So there are veterans of the Gland Warriors who survived and are still, or maybe still, inquisitorial bodyguards. We're not sure, but there are very, very few of these guys left, if at all. So.
Well, of the original ones,
yes,
in the actual the write up for them, it does point out that like it's been copied elsewhere, and you can find essentially the same thing in other sectors and stuff. It was left kind of open ended.
Yeah. So.
But that batch from Lostock, yeah, no, they're screwed. Those guys, no way they've lasted very long.
Well, I think we should now move on to one of the more memed abhumans, which is the Felinids. These are human-like abhumans. They have cat-like features, sometimes subtle feline features, sometimes more overt. And they are from a world that has a very specific name. What is the name of that world, Rusty?
I do not remember, and I feel like I'm cheating if I look it up now and pretend that I did.
Oh no, their world is called Carlos McConnell.
I feel weird for not remembering that now. That's definitely a very specific world. All right.
That's basically all we know about the felinids, is that they are
Okay.
cat-like features from a world called Carlos McConnell, which is a oddly specific name for a planet.
Yeah. That plays into my usual theory of this one started as a joke at someone's expense, where like maybe just they were tired of this guy Carlos in their game group, always talking about his waifus. And I say this lovingly in that my last headset also had cat ears on it. But yeah, like maybe they were just like, you know what? I want Carlos to know how I feel, but without confronting him myself.
Bretman04 points out, Cat Girls Are Canon. That is actually a song you can find on YouTube. It's actually quite entertaining. I do encourage you to look it up if you want to hear the song Cat Girls Are Canon. And they are indeed canon. They have made a more recent appearance in what's called Liber Xenologists, which is from last year or the year before. I think it's maybe 2024. But they originally appeared way back in the 3rd edition and 6th edition rule books. So it's been a while since we've seen any felinids. But according to xenologist Janus Drake, the Kroot have described felinids as being some of the most efficient killers that they've ever met. So now, by the way, Drake was very dubious about this Kroot's story, to be clear. So,
but yeah, the Kroot know a thing or two about efficient killing and hunting. So I'm inclined to believe them, except of course that they're filthy Xenos. But you know, when asked about specifically their area of expertise, I would believe it.
Nestor Vitumber points out there's a fan article about Rogue Trader Carlos McConnell on 1D4chan. Ooh, I'll have to check that out. I bet there is some really fun material on Carlos McConnell.
Yeah. Yeah, like I said, there's got to be an out of character story there, and now I want it, right? Like sometimes it's like, how'd that happen? I want to know.
Morning to Crescent points out that Space Marines based around felinids would be like Space Wolves around the Wolfen, power armor with cat ears. Well, the Space Wolves do have a lot of wolfy crap on their armor, so yeah, I can imagine a similar theme would be
the
cat version.
That would, and again, those would be some fun conversions. I recently on a play on tabletop, someone had a Chaos Marine army, and their Chaos bikers were riding some weird little like toy great cat. It was kind of a lion thing that had Marines riding on their back, and it was pretty cool looking. So like there's definitely potential there to go in a feline direction that would be pretty cool looking, and also would probably piss some people off hilariously.
That question we had earlier about whether abhumans were allowed to leave their planet, some are not. And here's an example of some that are definitely not. They're called the Neandor, or Homo sapien Hyanethus, which I'm not sure what that translates to. They're restricted to their world, which is Hyanoth 4. Rusty, if I said to you these guys are called Neandors, what are you going to imagine what kind of abhuman they are?
Well, initially I would assume something to do with Neanderthal, but then I would think that's too easy, and we already have Ogren and some similar stuff like that. So I doubt they're just Neanderthal, right? Like we know that there's got to be a reason that they are Neanderthals.
They're basically cavemen. I don't really know how else to say it. They are sometimes used for brute strength in the Imperial Guard, but they are, we have Ogren at home. The
Yeah.
Neandors.
Or Beastmen, honestly, at home too. Yeah. Right. Like definitely filling the same role there.
There's also a strain of abhumans called Nightsiders, and Nightsiders are basically they're people that evolved, or well, not evolved. Sorry, the people who adapted to the environment of a night world, something that's perpetually in darkness or subterranean environments. So they have very, very good night fighting ability, but they, are quite sensitive to light. So
yeah, which is kind of a drow or a golem or what have you from various other kind of fantasy settings where you've got super sharp senses in some ways, but not so much in others. And that takes a while. And we see there's like weird little fish and there's all sorts of like real life subterranean species that are definitely the kind of inspiration for that.
Yeah, there's a short story called Nightsider Imperialis where these guys are featured, and basically they have a variety of attributes, including echolocation, which is kind of cool.
Yeah.
And they even have chemiluminescence. They are living chem lights.
Oh, that's gonna maybe make the night fighting a little bit harder. Did anybody tell them?
I don't know.
Like, do they know? Like does everybody else just call them glowies behind their back and like, you guys are such great night fighters, we would never use you to just soak up enemy fire like these beast men. and then everybody tells them how good they are at sneaking and just sends them out and they just glow so that they get shot at instead of your regiment. Like
that's terrifying, but also very 40K.
Right? Like just nobody tell them. They think they're good at stuff. It's adorable.
Nestor Vitumber points out that Janus Drake believes the Neandors are simply the result of the Imperium's servile classes being left without noble leadership for too long. Oh, that is so patronizing and so 40K. Oh my God.
I mean, you got to keep a hand at the reins and watch your people. That's what happens if you don't keep them busy enough.
Ricardo Andre says, how are Nostramans not abhumans? Their eyes are so sensitive they would be blinded even by a moderate sun. They seem to have natural prey sense, which shifted their color gradient per theory. Well, simple answer. There are no more Nostramans because Nighthunter wiped out his own homeworld pre-heresy. That's why. Simple answer.
And like they might be one of the extinct ones, that were listed. Like maybe they were abhumans back in the day. They just aren't on this list because
he says before that,
genocide.
Obviously I was talking about before that. Well, okay, I'm sorry. I felt it was important to point out that they just don't exist anymore.
Yeah.
So.
But they, the write-up makes it clear that a bunch of them are extinct. So yeah, it could be that could have been enough of a change to count.
Well, so there's definitely a different opinion on abhumans during the Great Crusade and prior, which is when Nostramans would have been around. And during that period, obviously, Beastmen were like, "Yeah, we'll just take him in. We'll make an Imperial militia out of anybody we can get our hands on." I think the tolerance level would have been considerably higher, given that they were the homeworld of one of the Primarchs, the 18 Primarchs, who were all considered, very, at least at that time, pre-heresy, considered all to be very important, dignified sons of the Emperor. It would take a sincerely ballsy Imperial commander during the pre-heresy time to say, "Hey, those guys aren't actually human."
Yeah, and I think it also comes down to 10,000 years of moral stagnation and worship of the idea of humanity instead of the idea of humanity as an excuse for progress and science and rational thought, right? Like, so the superstition, I think is there more in 40K, or at least is there in a different way than it was in the Horus Heresy era. But yeah, who knows? Like maybe they're Maybe they're on an abhuman list somewhere.
Maybe. Again, it's I would say unlikely given how long they've been extinct, but fair enough. So we've covered. Go ahead. Go ahead. You were going to say something.
Nope, I'm sorry. I was just fighting a yawn because I did not sleep great today. It is not because your scintillating conversation is not enough to keep me up. You're caffeinating my soul. Don't worry. But yeah, I'm aware that I keep yawning, and I'm sorry, guys.
Oh no. I thought you were going to say something. It's all.
Nope.
So
all
no
good.
big deal. No big deal. So we've briefly covered some of these other subtypes. There is in fact a subtype called the subs.
Sure. Why
Just
not?
subs. They are known to be hideous to the point of being the frequent victim of ecclesiarchy purges.
Yeah.
Which, sounds like Beastmen to me, but, hey, there you go.
Yeah. I have to mention Drapanes, though. For those ones?
The what now?
The Drapanes. Speaking of hideous and of an abhuman species we got nothing on, we know one thing about them. And it's they have sickle-like heads.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, well, these
what
guys,
even is that? Like what?
they have like a sentence of lore, like a single sentence of lore.
And it's just they're abhumans. They're from this world, and they have, quote, sickle-like heads. And I'm like, how's that? What does that even look like?
I think I know. I think this is a reference to the movie Nightbreed. If you remember that one, there was a guy with a sickle-shaped head, and it looks like Mac. Remember Mac Tonight, that the mascot for McDonald's back in the day, who had a crescent moon head. It looks like that. He's got like I can't do it with my hands, but he's got a crescent-shaped head in both of those two things.
Okay.
But that's all we know. That's literally all we know. Ricky Chapman in with another super chat. Thank you very much, sir. Nightsiders appeared in the Eternal Darkness book fighting Kroot with the Catachans. That's okay. That's interesting. I didn't know that. And they're also in that short story I mentioned, but this is super cool. I don't know if that short story and this is what you're talking about is the same thing, but I think they might be different things, which is even more exciting because there's more information on Nightsiders out there for you to find.
Yeah, while we're dropping source material, I just want to give a shout out to White Dwarf 303.
Woo!
That's the one that has a chapter approved article by Andy Hoare that's just called Abhumans, and it's where several of these regiments and stuff were first mentioned. Particularly the ones that are on brand for various stripes of Imperial Guard. So a lot of them are in that book that you just mentioned that also just has a bunch of freaky alien, not quite human species or whatever. But yeah, this article is the one that has the kind of Imperial Guard flavors based on abhumans. And in this edition, many moons ago, you were able to kind of tweak your army in different ways with doctrines. So there was ways to kind of show some of these mechanically. So yeah, but White Dwarf 303, it's a cool one. It's got some neat stuff on it for this sort of thing.
That was the one where they introduced the plastic Terminators before the current plastic Terminators that we have now.
The first plastic Terminators.
Ask me how I know that.
How do you know that, Ross?
Because I was working at White Dwarf at the time.
Oh, nice.
I think that may be one of the issues that even has my name in it. I'm not entirely certain.
I'll look idly while you're talking because now I want to know.
Well, it's possible that I'm not in there because so I was in and I was out depending on what time frame.
Yeah, I believe you, Ross. Sure.
Well, I know
your girlfriend's from Canada. We don't know her. Yeah, I got you.
Oh, you Canadian girlfriend me. Damn. I actually have minis in the issue 300. Like I could point to and say, these are my minis, and they're listed and everything.
Yeah. Publication happens like that sometimes where you like something is supposed to be in one issue and then it just gets moved but
so the Goliaths from Necromunda, they are commonly considered certainly at the very edge of the distinction between human and abhuman. And a lot of people believe that they may in fact be an emerging abhuman species.
That sounds suspiciously like science.
I know, right?
Better watch it, buddy.
Micah says his girlfriend is from Cadia. Trust me, bro.
Yeah.
All right, so we've covered, I think, the majority of the ones that we have lore for. Remember, there's just not a lot of lore on these guys.
Like a lot of them, it's literally a line, and I'd say for even more of them, it's a paragraph, right? You know, you get kind of one little thing that's mentioned.
Now, there was a group of abhuman worlds during the heresy that came into conflict with the Imperium during the Great Crusade. The Imperial Fist and the Death Guard teamed up to take them down.
I don't want to fight that wombo combo.
Yeah.
You talk about some unstoppable, right? Like, like, whew, good luck with that, buddy.
It's
like you can probably outmaneuver them, but that's about it. That's all you're gonna have any chance of being better than them at.
It's infamous because two of the Imperial Fist commanders got into a fist fight over how to best capture the capital, and Mortarion had to break it up.
Well, all right. I guess if you need to send somebody to survive an Imperial Fist fight, you could do worse than a Primarch to be the one that wades in there and breaks them up.
There's also the New Men. Rusty, are you familiar with the New Men?
I know that they are a thing. I know that they were, I think of them at least as like a kind of a walking plot device. I want to say they had some link to like Necrons or something, but I also, for a little while, it felt like almost all the lore had some sort of link to Necrons. So I might be thinking of something else. Are they, I mean, with a name like New Men, I would assume that they're being made by somebody.
They are.
I know we've got Belisarius Cawl making new Marines, but it feels pretty heretical even for him to be cranking out humans. So I'm going to guess the flip side with our boy Fabulous Bill.
Fabius Bile.
Is he cranking out people?
That's right.
All
Fabius Bile, who is a former Emperor's Children apothecary, who has become what's known as the Gene Father for the Chaos Space Marines. He is a meddler in the holy process of DNA and genetic combinations, and he has sought to constantly improve upon either humanity or the Emperor's own creations throughout his time. The New Men are the pinnacle of Bile's art. These are beings that they possess strength and intelligence superior to any human, but as they also possess the worst traits of mankind.
That's not like Slanesh followers.
No,
it's crazy.
Fabius is very proud of his New Men, his children, but he believes that they must eventually kill him to achieve their destiny. It's a fate.
Sure, why not?
It's a fate he's willing to accept.
Yeah. I think I was thinking of the Men of Iron. That when I saw them in some book, I thought people were just describing Necrons, and like the characters in the book didn't know what to call them. So I think I got the Men of Iron and the New Men conflated. I just had to, for my own mental well-being, I had to unpack why I thought what I thought. So I think that's what happened there. But yeah, Fabius Bile is a renowned philanthropist and a scientist and one of the most brilliant minds in the Imperium. So I'm sure that they're being made with only the noblest of intentions.
Well, Ricardo Andre points out that the main point of the New Men is that they are not tied to the warp, therefore the warp cannot taint them. They're being created by a guy who is, corrupted by the warp. So how accurate is what he's saying here? I'm not sure. Which is why he believes, I think he's saying Fabius Bile believes, that all Emperor's creations are flawed, therefore they are warped, because they are warp touched. I guess you're talking about Space Marines here. as the descendants of the Primarchs who are in fact warp touched. So it's complicated.
Could Fabius Bile have gene spliced in some blank DNA, or even maybe just a weaker strand of like the blanks? So like maybe there is, who knows?
Well, Fabius Bile he's so good at what he does that he was able to create a perfect, in his words, perfect clone of Fulgrim, which was then captured by Trazyn the Infinite and placed into his collection because of that perfection. So maybe. I would say also of interest is the Glandhounds. The Glandhounds are a subset of the New Men, and these guys are made with partial gene seed implementation. So
they sound nice.
They're an upgrade of the Gland Warriors, the Glandhounds. They have muscles comparable to an Astartes, but they're unlikely to defeat an Astartes one-on-one. Astartes being Space Marines, and they're very difficult to kill. And they were designed to hunt Space Marines in packs to gather gene seed for Fabius Bile. Super fun fact: they are able to excrete a very strong form of acid, as you would imagine. They're able to urinate a very strong form of acid. Let me put it that way.
Cool, great.
Yeah, I know. I was just like, oh, thanks for that. That's what I needed that in my head.
Is there a purpose for the acid? Like, do they use it to break through the black carapace or something? Like, is there a reason he made them piss acid, or was it just Fabius Bile going like, you know what Space Marines can't do, and my dudes can? Like is there does it come up for a reason, or do they just happen to urinate super acid?
So Ricardo Andre points out that Clone Grim was not captured; he was sold to Trazyn. Ricardo Andre is keeping me on point
fair.
Here.
I have a half-assed plan for an Emperor's Children in the lore army, but using like Blood Angel minis. So you still have the wing aesthetic and these handsome similar features to one another, but then painting them up in Emperor's Children colors, and having them just shun anyone that's touched by chaos. So they're that flavor of like, Fulgrim was perfection, we must be like Fulgrim. That obsessive type of Emperor's Children, I think, would be fun as a painting project and that sort of thing. So I don't know. Maybe they're new men. Maybe they were a byproduct of his Fulgrim experiment. Might be how they're in business.
And the very last one I would like to talk about are the Hulgasts. These are underhive abhumans they have traits adapted to cramped industrial and low light habitats. They're called Hulgasts because they often live in the hull areas of starships.
Right, which makes sense.
And the lore kind of disagrees. Sometimes they're mutants, sometimes they're abhumans. They're in that gray area.
And it might also come down to like, maybe there's a threshold at which point you are an acceptable Hulgast versus now you're a mutant. Maybe there's some specific list of biological traits or something, no doubt worked up by the administratum or somebody. So yeah, that's interesting, because it also sounds like it's in a very kind of mutant way. It's a crisscross of a couple other abhumans we've talked about, right? Where you're like, oh, they're small, like ratlings. They can see in the dark, like these guys. They're, with a name like Ghasts, they've got to be good looking, right? So like, you've got like the subs, So yeah, it sounds like they're definitely another one of those overlapping Venn diagram spots of some freaky deakiness.
So, fun fact: Hulgasts are one of my creations from Dark Heresy.
Uh-huh.
They were part of the first book that I worked on, which is Creatures Anathema. And the idea, so there's these things on starships called the black holes. They are starships in 40K are just very, very big. They're super big.
Yeah.
And sometimes they're so big that parts of the ship just don't get visited for very long periods of time. And these are what's called the black holes, because they usually cut off power. There's no light. And people can get trapped down there. People can get lost down there. People can get stuck near the warp engines down there and get mutated and transformed into something that is not entirely human. In my head at the time, to be clear, I was thinking that they were just like hull gas was kind of a blanket term you could apply to any mutants that you find on a void ship running around, in the dark. But as I started developing it more, I was like, no, this is actually, there's more here than just weird mutants. Go ahead, Randy. Rest of you.
Yeah, it's just it could just be a standardization label for mutants that are found in ships, or it could be more specific than that. Seems to me, like I could see it going either way. And again, I think it comes down to like, do they breed true? Is one of the defining characteristics of Abhumans, or, could definitely see it going either way.
So hull gas do breed true, which is that is a part of that distinction, I should point out. Yeah. Hey, we have a super chat from Stephen Lucas. He says Troth from Turnip 28. I guess somebody Turnip 28 is one of our commenters. He wanted to know why it's illegal for them to leave the planet. It's not illegal. They just can't survive off their home planet. The Troth are the plant creatures, the dryad version of Abhumans, and they need to stay on their home planet to survive.
Which again is, I think, a little wink and nod to fantasy stuff, where you've got who have their home tree or a home glade type of thing. So it's just another imperial attempt to codify a fantasy trope.
So this would be a good time if you guys have any questions for Rusty or questions for me, you want to maybe start putting those together, because we are getting close to the end of our discussion on Abhumans. There's just not a lot left to talk about with these guys.
Yeah, they're definitely have always been the exception rather than the focus of much of lore. And it's, again, you've got things like Ratlings, Navigators, and Ogren that maybe come up pretty often, but they also aren't often in the spotlight, and they aren't often focused on beyond kind of the stereotype, right, of Ogren being just big and dumb and strong, and this is what they're used for, right? So yeah, they've definitely an interesting aspect of the lore that has consistently lived on the edges of the lore, but has consistently lived there because they've been around forever. Like you said, Beastmen go back how far, right? Like, so it's one of those weird things where it's like it's always been a part of the setting, but it's never been like the focus of the setting. So yeah, I'm excited about those Beastmen. I haven't been following Kill Team other than when one comes out for an army I'm working on. Like I got my Ratlings when that Kill Team came out, and I was bemoaning it to one of my editors. Like, I can't believe they're going to sell to Ratlings, and I'm not going to get one while I'm writing this thing I may or may not be writing right now. Like, it felt like this cosmic injustice. Like, come on, man. Like, can't my local store hold on to one for me or something? Like, so, but I haven't been keeping up with Kill Team other than when it's the minis I know I want. So yeah, those Beastmen completely slipped past me, which is probably for the best. I don't need to buy a box just to look cool.
Well,
but yeah.
One of the prevailing theories about Kill Team, at least amongst the hobby community, is that Kill Team is kind of a way for Games Workshop to quietly product test different ideas. Yeah. They have. It's also possibly a way to kind of distinguish some of their stuff from the fantasy side. Specifically, demons is one that gets brought up a lot. That they may use Kill Team to reintroduce demons as a 40K specific version rather than the same across both all their settings. Yeah. Who knows? But I think it makes some sense to say, okay, hey, we're going to do a Beastman Kill Team, because that is a full force for that game, but that you can still use in regular 40K, just not as a full army.
Which is a trend that I've liked the times that I've seen it. It does make for some pretty complicated unit options. When you look at like the Hand of the Archon, or even, the Ratlings, or the Inquisitor and their retinue, like often it leads to a lot of options on the 40K tabletop. The Eldar Corsairs unit right now as it stands, because they're getting some new stuff. But yeah, like it's definitely a cool way to product test and to say, hey, like what's the interest here. I really like what they've done for the Tau with it. It's been a way where for ages we've been told the Tau have a bunch of Xenos that serve in their military, but we only ever saw Kroot for a long time. And like they used Kill Team as a way to introduce onto the tabletop a new branch of Tau Auxilia, which is another thing. I know a lot of people would love a human Tau Auxilia unit option. And I feel like Kill Team would be a superb way to do that. Just smushing together Imperial Guard infantry with Tau equipment, in the vein of Vespid, where like they're clearly not Tau. There's some subtle biological differences, but then they still clearly have Tau equipment, just like the Kroot do. And I know people have been wanting that for like humans forever. And I feel like Kill Team, like you mentioned, would be a cool way to kind of product test that, and be some neat stuff there.
So for fun's sake, just because you're here and because I'm not going to get this opportunity very often,
Right.
Rusty did some really great work for me on Wrath and Glory. He wrote a really kick-ass Eldar adventure, which was part of a book we were going to produce for the Ulysses version, but I don't think that ever got made, unfortunately.
People have it.
Oh, they do? Okay.
Like
So
I've seen people discuss it and stuff online. So yeah.
If you know the name of the book or the adventure, that'd be really cool. I've forgotten all about it, unfortunately, at this point.
I believe I know my adventure. I think I called Twisted Strands.
Okay, that sounds right.
And then, Dark Tides was the like kind of campaign.
That's the book. Yeah.
/ adventure. And then I did one adventure in it that was the Eldar kind of interacting with the rest of this plot.
That's right.
And then I did about a 30,000 word craft world write-up, and that one didn't get made.
That's right.
And as just a peek behind the curtain here, not at all violating NDA or whatever, they won't let me use that craft world in the Black Library fiction that I write. They've expanded on that craft world. They did a whole Eldar book, and it's like canon, but it's canon licensed that way. So they don't want us using it this way. That's a different department, right? And it was an interesting thing to me that you don't think about as a fan, or at least I certainly don't. It never occurs to me that something is half canon, right? But yeah, it's in this interesting in between zone where like it's real and it's legit, but you're kind of not supposed to use it outside of the RPG because different department or different licensing deal or what have you. And it's always been interesting to me that I've been doing this for 15 years, and sometimes I still stumble across a new thing in the freelancing and tie-in fiction thing. So I may have found some sneaky ways to kind of work around that a little bit, and reference some stuff, and not by name, but I really wanted this craft world to happen. And I also felt like black, white, and purple would just be a dope color scheme, especially with, Eldar minis having that kind of high elf aesthetic. So it is still canonical because the adventure got published and they're out there. And the new stuff that they wrote, they did reference like the Pirate Queen and stuff that I wrote into the adventure. So like it's still there. But yeah, I had a whole big fat, novella length write up of a craft world that is now off limits, but was never published. So like I can use what I want from that as long as I don't mention that it's from this, right? From the RPG. And I'd run into that before with like BattleTech, where I knew that the BattleTech video game was its own thing licensed by someone else. But that's because all the FASA properties are weird that way. Um, but yeah, I was surprised to see it as kind of an internal within GW thing. But like corporations gonna corporate,
Yeah.
So yeah, it was just an interesting little wrinkle to me. But I was going to say while I was on here, I would not be a Black Library writer if it was not for that adventure. Because I literally used the email address that we had from conversations about that adventure. I emailed them a couple of years ago, and it's not even the same person. Like the email address was like job title at GW or Games Workshop or Black Library. I don't remember. I'm
Probably
not.
licensing.
Yeah.
Probably.
I'm not gonna like rattle off the email, but like I had that email. My wife started to get into the hobby side of the hobby, and there's no way that I'm doing that without getting back into the gaming side. So a couple of years ago, we start watching, YouTube videos of how to paint Space Marines, and I'm like, well, I need to make some Space Marines now. And we're a couple months into watching these videos and buying minis and working on stuff, and I'm like, you know what? If I'm going to be thinking about Games Workshop stuff all the time, I'm going to see if I can get them to pay me to think about Games Workshop stuff all the time. And I emailed them. I didn't do it the way you're supposed to, but because I've been doing this job for long enough, it worked. So I just rolled the dice on shooting an email to that old address. And I think they said they'd gone through like 3 people at that job posting. So they were like, who the hell is this guy? But then when they like Googled me, they found how much I'd written. And they're like, oh, okay. Yeah, no, we can get you to do some fiction for us, But yeah, if it wasn't for already having that level of completely misplaced confidence, I never would have just blithely reached out to Black Library and been like, hey, what up? I'm going to write some stuff. And it's really taken off since then. I've got 2 short stories out so far, just to mention them. Well, the first one was 7 Ships, which came out during Heretic Astartes week almost a year ago now. And then I did the Death Guard short story for that week. And then in Death and Beauty, a recent anthology, it came out, I want to say October, maybe November. I have a story in there. It's an Astra Militarum anthology. So my story there is another real pick-me-up, just feel-good yarn. Nothing says lighthearted romp like Death Guard and Astra Militarum. But yeah, so those are the 2 that are out so far. But the response has been great from the community. I recently won some awards from Goonhammer, which is pretty dope. I got their GW Debutante of the Year, along with my friend Avalon. We ended up tying the last night of the vote. We were just flip-flopping back and forth. Like every time one of us F5'd, we'd see a different gap, and we were doing it all night. And then we went, man, like, let's just talk to him and see if we can just kind of split it so that we can just both be 100% happy for our friend, right? And so we emailed him about that one. And then I didn't email them about this other category, which was best non-GW tie-in that I had also been nominated for my Battletech work. And there, my friend Brian Young and I exactly tied. We had the exact same number of votes at the end. So it was really cool to me just to be nominated at all, but then to be nominated twice I was over the moon. And then as the voting started to unfold in both categories, it was me and the person that I knew that were just running away with the votes. So it's like, man, I got good taste in friends. Like it was just a nice little like ego boost after ego boost. So it was just super cool. And yeah, people have been just really neat about it so far, and the feedback's been great. I'm really excited for more of it to come out. It has been hell to not talk about some of the upcoming stuff. But I've got, I want to say now, 6 novellas and 2 novels, or 6 short stories and 2 novels on the way.
Wow, that's a
In
lot.
the pipeline. Yeah. So it's been really cool. I'm over the moon about it. I've been playing this game forever. And it was one that it never would have struck me to try and write for them until it struck me to try and write for them. And I remembered I had that email address. So
because you wrote for me.
Well, because we did this RPG work where we were then contacting Black Library directly to get stuff okayed, by their lore experts. And I was just like, man, I'm shooting my shot. So yeah, it's been really cool. I'm kind of going through a military sci-fi arc the last couple of years between doing BattleTech and 40K kind of all of a sudden. So it's been some military sci-fi whiplash, but it's been super neat. So yeah, community's been great. It's been a lot of fun. And in hindsight, when it happened, I realized that it was kind of a geeky wish come true, right? It was another one of those moments in this geeky gig where I was still like, man, I am so excited about this. Like it's out, it's official. I did this. And yeah, it was one of the ways that I know I've got the right job, is that I do still geek out about this stuff, right? Like when it becomes just work, I'm like, why am I doing this? Right? Like I should just be in a cubicle somewhere if I find this boring. But when you get to tell cool stories about cool games that you love for cool people to read, and you still like that, it's like, all right, cool, I'm doing the right thing. So yeah, it's been a really neat couple of years.
Well, as one of your friends, I can say that you do have very good taste in friends.
Yeah. Completely impartially, you can compliment me.
Yes, unbiased.
Yeah.
We've known each other for a long time, Rusty and I have, so we're good friends.
Like I said, I want to say it's 10 or 12 years now.
Just about.
And we shared a burger lunch. As I recall, it was a burger joint in Dallas that first time.
Whataburger, I think. Yeah.
And then multiple times since then, when we've overlapped at a convention or what have you, we always go out of our way to hang out and spend some time. So yeah.
Ricardo Andre. Go ahead. I was going to say. Go ahead.
I would just say it's been longer than I like to think about. Like it's one of those friendships where like, man, if I sit and do the math, I just feel old.
Oh, yeah, me too.
Yeah, I'll just say a long time. We've just been friends for a long time.
Me too. Ricardo Andre asks, new craft world. God, I wished we had some more. Which craft world is it, if it exists? The name of the craft world is Ulkari.
It's a craft world Ulkari. Again, this adventure book is still canon. It's called Wrath and Glory, Dark Tides. And it's got a decent amount of lore on Ulkari, enough to kind of flavor it and color it. But then there's a lot more in this other book that they did, that's all Eldar stuff for their in kind of, I guess, edition, I want to call it, of Wrath and Glory, that I'm not involved with, but I don't denounce and taint it or whatever. But yeah, it was really neat to get to do that, and I'm still going to paint up some Eldar in that color scheme, because again, I just think it's going to look dope. Just like purple, black, white, some silver, maybe. Just it's going to be clean.
And it does. One of the things that we did have a lot of fun with was we started work on a whole Eldar source book, and there was like a Corsair princess, which I love the idea of a pirate elf princess running around doing stuff.
Yeah.
It was so cool. There was a lot of really cool stuff there. But have you guys got any questions for Rusty about his work? If you do, please post it in the chat.
And I've mostly been known for my Shadowrun stuff for a long time. It was kind of the ones that I was the most consistent on. I've done BattleTech stuff. I've written some vampires, some Vampire Dark Ages, some Mutants and Masterminds, some Earth Dawn. I am the only currently working writer that has the holy trinity of BattleTech, Earth Dawn, and Shadowrun. That I worked on all three at about the same time. So that's kind of a weird little achievement unlocked. That again matters to geeks of a certain age. It was a cool thing. But yeah, I've been kind of a journeyman freelancer for a long time, just all over whatever game catches my fancy. And like I said, whatever Kickstarter I randomly message and then get a job with. But yeah, there's a lot of the gaming community overlaps with freelancers where, like, Ross and I know if I need somebody, Ross can do it. Ross knows if he needs somebody, I can do it. And that's how a lot of people work for a lot of different games. So yeah, it's easy to kind of get spread out through geekery like that. So feel free to ask me questions about any of those, or I don't know, whatever else, man. I'm easy.
Face Octopus asks, when it is said that an Ogryn is stronger than a Space Marine, are we talking Firstborn or Primaris?
I don't know that we've got like hard math on exact strength scores for the most part. I know, like, they say Primaris are stronger and tougher. It always felt to me like that just means they have a sleeker helmet and a little bit bigger gun. Like there's not like these other huge differences that I've seen. I would assume stronger than a Primaris still, if only for narrative reasons, because strength is the Ogryn's thing. So to me, it makes sense for them to still be stronger and innately tougher. But then you could still have room for a Firstborn or a Primaris, a given Marine versus a given Ogryn, to like win that fight by doing things their way and showing the versatility and skill of a Space Marine, But I would say personally, in just raw strength, I think Ogryn win out.
Oh yeah, I agree, and I think it's a case of if we're arm wrestling, if an Ogryn's arm wrestling a Firstborn over here and a Primaris over here, okay, he's gonna beat the Firstborn in about maybe 10 seconds and the Primaris in maybe like 15, but he's still gonna beat both of them.
Or he could beat them in true over the top 40K fashion in like 8 hours, right? It could be one of those things when they, in the lore they talk about like a duel that went for a day and a night, and you're like, really? Because like in game, whoever charges just kills the other guy, like, But yeah, so it could be one of those over the top versions instead, where they arm wrestle for 8 hours before finally somebody budges, But yeah, I agree. I think it would be stronger than either of them. Primaris is closer,
I, as a man of a certain age, I do appreciate that when we're discussing arm wrestling, you bring up over the top a couple of times.
There you go.
So,
you're welcome.
Yeah. Let's see. When I turn my hat around, it's like flipping a switch.
Yeah.
All right, guys, we are close to the end here. So any more questions for Rusty? Otherwise, it's just open season. Any questions you would like to ask either of us is fine. Rusty, I want to say thanks for joining us on Lorebeards 40K. You've been a great host, especially for this topic.
Thanks for having me. As always, it's a pleasure. And yeah,
this topic, which may or may not have something to do with something you're working on that may or may not be coming out at some point in the future. I cannot confirm or deny any of these things.
Yeah. We take our NDAs seriously with G-dubs, and like I said, I don't want to drop the ball at the goal line here. So like, again, I'm just saying, like, I've got lots of stuff coming out. I'm not going to say what factions I'm writing or who they're fighting against or what have you. I will give away there are fights, but that's about all you're going to get.
Oh my God! Yep, confirmed.
There's some combat in my Warhammer stories.
Ricky Chapman sends us a last-minute super chat. Thank you, Ricky Chapman. He says, we met some Afriel strain in our campaign, his tabletop campaign. They did well. They clogged up those chain choppas wonderfully.
Woof. Uh,
Poor Afriel strain.
yeah.
I imagine they did well at first and then got totally
Yeah.
mulched by the chain choppers. That would be classic Afriel strain.
Yep. And it had to be some sort of bad luck reason for it. Like they're holding their own against the orcs, and then a random orc plane crashed nearby, and they got reinforcements or something.
Micah asks, Russell, what army are you collecting now? And if you are collecting,
Oh no. All right, here's the thing. I make bad choices. Uh, so for 1 second here, let me see how much this lights this up. This is most of our minis on this shelf behind me right now that goes all the way there and then also is half of the wall on the other side of the room. I am currently, I would say, actively collecting Eldari, which I'm doing the most Eldari army I can, in that it's Dark Eldar and Harlequins and Corsairs and Craft World.
oh, it's Yannari.
Kind of. I still haven't decided if I want to use that paint scheme, but like right now, you can play Harlequins with Craft World or with Drukari, right? So I'm going for just the Eldariest Eldar that ever did Eldar, including some Age of Sigmar conversions for some of them to be Exodites that they recruited.
Nice.
So like some of my bikers are riding Cold Ones from like the fantasy range and stuff. So I've got that. That's my current project. I am also working on an Imperial Fist army. I'm working on a Raven Guard army. I picked up some Space Wolves because the new minis are just dope. I've got a little bit of Death Guard because I want to make at least like a montage of my first Black Library story, which was Death Guard, which I hated, by the way. I do not like the Death Guard. Traditionally speaking, they are not my favorite. But I wanted to do what Black Library needed me to do at the time. So I put my heart and soul in a story for a faction I didn't like, and it was actually a really great kind of trial by fire. But yeah, so I got to at least make my Chaos Lord Qatar Fect from that. So I've got some cool bits and stuff I'm putting together there, and then I've got a lot of Guard. But in my defense, I always had a lot of Astra Militarum. So they were my boys, and yeah, there's more of them coming. And yeah, so got a lot going on the old miniature front right now. I buy a lot of stuff secondhand, and my friends laugh because I just have a knack for I bought a Baneblade for $45.
Wow.
Like just it was on eBay. Nobody else found it. Again, let me see if I can show it, if it'll show up here. This big cardboard box here. That's a cardboard box that was full of Raven Guard, all with Raven Guard accoutrements and shoulder pads and stuff. And the eBay auction never had the word Astartes or Space Marine or Warhammer
Oh no.
or 40K or 40,000. It had a Raven Guard. And they just didn't have any of the big keywords.
Oops.
So I got like 2,500 points of assembled Raven Guard. And I don't remember exactly, but it was a 2-digit dollar amount. I ended up PayPaling the person extra because I felt bad about how much of a loss they were taking on this. So when I say that I've got a lot of stuff, it's because I am able to get really good deals on it. That's where all my skill points went into writing and finding good eBay prices, apparently. But yeah, so I've got a lot going on that front, and it's also just part of how I'm wired with the flavor of neurospicy that I am. part of my process when I write is to kind of immerse myself in a faction. And I find that if I'm hobbying on the dudes I'm writing about, it just kind of helps me stay in the zone while still doing the hobbying hobby with my wife, right? So like I'm still doing the painting and stuff that we do together. I'm just angling it in a way that lets me kind of stay locked in on writing. So there's a reason for the madness. It's not just that I'm a lunatic with poor impulse control.
Well, no one's going to judge you for that here, as Micah points out. But we are at the end of our show, so we need to sign off. Go ahead, sir.
One last question. I just saw that I spotted my name. I think Ethan Sean is one of the best Space Marine miniatures they've ever made. That was a question from Micah again. Yeah, Ethan Sean, the new Raven Guard chapter master, I have very strong feelings about, and I cannot tell you why, but I think even if I didn't have any ulterior reason for those strong feelings, I think he's just one of the best Space Marine miniatures in a long time. He ticks a lot of my boxes. I'm a sucker for a miniature that has a combination of textures. When you've got power armor plus a cloak plus fur plus feathers type of thing, right? You've got that mixture going on. I love it. It's a dynamic pose. I love it. He's got helmet options. I love it. Yeah, I think it's one of their best miniatures in ages. And someday later on, maybe I'll have more to say about Ethan Sean.
Well, if you want to paint them up, you can always put them on our Discord because we often talk about them on our show. But that is our show for today, everybody. Thank you for coming by, Rusty. Thank you guys, Lure Seekers. If you want to join our Lure Seeker community, we have a Discord you can go check out for the Lorebeards. It's really cool. And we will see you guys on Wednesday with another Lorebeards 40K show. So thank you very much and good night.